Here we are, live and live. All right. So today's a little different. That's why I'm wearing my hat. So if you scroll through your feed and you see me in a hat, that means we're not talking
I guess
about.
I should have a hat today.
Well, no, it's just for me because we're not doing real estate and finance today, even though that's what it says in the very beginning. I don't know. Maybe if you have any real estate questions, you can ask Kevin. But other than that,
Happy to help.
that's not my intent to discuss today. So today, I want to talk about one of my personal passions, which is youth sports and youth athletics. And this is something I had a conversation with somebody not too long ago about, and really wanted to bring Kevin in here because if there's an expert here in Mansfield about this stuff, he's definitely somebody that I would put into that category. I've known Kevin for a little while now, but for anybody that doesn't know, this is Kevin Lewis. He is currently, the reason I'm having him in today is because he's the president of MYBA, which is Mansfield Youth Baseball Association here in Mansfield, where I live. He also does many other things, but and we'll touch on a few of those. But his current business actually is he does fundraisers with schools and whatnot. We'll get into that because I think it's a really good move from what he's been doing with the league for so many years into something that he now has as a business. And then he also spent 15 years as a high-level executive for Taco Bueno, and a lot of management and business development skills that he kind of picked up there. Definitely made the league that I participated in. My kids played in it. I served on the board for a number of years. Definitely made it something that I was proud to be a part of, and wanted to chat with Kevin a little bit because whenever you're in charge of anything, whatever that may be, the more people that you have involved in it, the more opportunity there is to maybe not be everybody's favorite person all the time. And for the most part, that's not the problem for Kevin, if anybody really knows him. But it's the complaining from the cheap seats mentality sometimes that people get into. So I think if you get to know people and where their heart is on what they're doing, I think it really resonates, and you start to understand really what people's motivations are. And I've had that experience dealing with all kinds of people from all walks of life, especially with the youth sports stuff. So that's really what we're going to chat about today. But I kind of want to start with Kevin. You grew up in DFW, right?
Correct.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about where you went to high school, family, kind of how you got to what you're doing today.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're rooted in the DFW area. I was born in Fort Worth.
Mm-hmm.
And
where'd you go to high school?
Went to Eastern Hills.
Okay.
Different experience than probably it is now, but grew up in Burleson.
Mm-hmm.
That's really where I spent my childhood and played baseball. Most of my baseball career was in Burleson. And when I was in middle school, we moved to Fort Worth.
Okay.
And then kind of finished out there. And so, I come from a big family, extended family, very large extended family. My mom's dad had 23 brothers and sisters. So, yeah.
Wow.
Think about that for a minute. Wow. He wore the first wife out, and she passed away after 12 kids. I think the first one had 12 and the second one had 12. There were two sets of twins.
This is your grandfather.
My grandfather.
Wow.
My grandfather's dad.
Okay. So a couple generations.
He came. Yeah. Right. So my mom's grandfather, and then my dad's side of the family is all kind of local and anywhere from Granbury across DFW. So we have a lot of family in the area. And other than really going off to college in Abilene, I've always been in the DFW area, mainly in Tarrant County.
I know I found out randomly. So somebody that I work with in the area, title office, Tiffany Williams.
You probably know Tiffany, Sherry Lamont, Sherry Lamont Fisher.
Yep.
That's my cousin.
Yeah.
Sherry is. It's funny. I saw yesterday on Facebook, somebody posted some question for a realtor, and I commented in there. I don't think there's any realtors in this group because I think 90% of everybody on the Facebook Mansfield Talk group is somehow related in real estate.
Yes.
Either it's the same way you are or an actual realtor, but
yeah. So you have a big family.
I do.
And they're spread out all over the place.
They're all over the place.
And you have, is it just one son? Is that correct?
I have one son, Zach.
Yeah.
He recently graduated college in aerospace engineering.
Wow.
He's known since he was like 8 years old that he's wanted to do that. And so he works for Lockheed now, has a great job with them. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
Good kid.
Yeah.
He made it. I raised him kind of a single dad. And he spent most of his time with me and, running as many restaurants as I did and running MYBA.
Yeah.
Took up a lot of my time, but he definitely made things easy on me. The kid never really got in trouble ever. And to this day, I'm not aware of the kid ever lying in his life. he cannot not tell the truth to save his life.
See,
He has, no matter what it is.
Just fell over like, oh,
be careful what you ask him, because he's going to tell you the truth if he answers you, because he will not lie. And there was lots of, he actually made me less of a white liar, because there's lots of times when he's growing up, he'd say, well, that's not true. You're right. It's not, you know, why did I even lie? Like, because you lie about the dumbest stuff.
Yeah.
Like somebody says, you know, hey, didn't I see you in the grocery store the other day? That wasn't me.
Yeah,
Dad, it was you.
Yeah, you were there.
We were
right
we
there.
were
I
at
saw
Kroger
you
yesterday, and I saw him.
Yeah. It's always an exaggeration. It's like, oh, you know, I was working out again. I've been at the gym for like the last 5 days. Like, you went one day last week. It's
you can't really count sitting in the parking lot, Dad. You were picking me up. Which he's really into working out now.
Yeah.
You know, he was a small guy growing up, small, super fast, but small. And about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, he started getting into working out, and he's been very disciplined about it. And he transformed his body big time. He's really in good shape.
That's great.
He didn't get that part from me, obviously. But
so was your I would assume that when your son was growing up, that was the reason you got into coaching and getting into baseball, and kind of where you led to MYBA. Is that right?
You know, my dad coached me and my brothers, you know, when we were little, and, you know, before I ever had a child, I thought, you know, that's definitely what I want to do. So definitely when he became 3, 4 years old and started playing sports, I coached him from the get-go. In fact, his very first experience, I had lived out in the Plano area for a short amount of time, and then we were moving back this way. In fact, I was building my house here in Plano, and it wasn't quite ready, and my house in the Plano area sold. So we moved in with my parents for about 6 months up in South Arlington, and he was old enough to start playing a sport. And so I was never a fan of soccer growing up. It's not my thing. It's still not my thing. It's just not exciting to me, but I wanted him to, I didn't want to pigeonhole him to baseball. I wanted to figure out what he wants to do, just like every parent does.
Absolutely.
Most do. So I signed him up for soccer with the YMCA in Arlington.
Okay.
And I'll never forget, on a Friday night, I got a phone call, and they said, Mr. Lewis. I said, yeah. They said, well, this is the YMCA. They said, we got some good news and we got some bad news. And I said, okay, what's the good news? And they said, well, Zach's on the Orange Crush.
Okay.
I'll never forget the Orange Crush. I said, awesome. What's the bad news? And they said, we have no coach. And I said, okay. And they said, it gets worse. And I said, okay. They said, first game's tomorrow.
So
I'm not even joking.
Yes.
And they said, can you coach? And I said, well, can I coach? Yes. Can I coach soccer? Give me the rule book, send it to me now.
Right.
And I guess I could coach anything if I know.
This is before YouTube, by the way, too. So yeah.
There was no Googling YouTube. No. So they sent me a rule book, or I got my hands on it somehow, and learned just enough to put kids out there and say, go put the ball down there. I didn't know anything about positions, forwards, and all that. All I knew was goalie.
Yeah.
You know, every kid knows goalie. So anyway, that's how it started. Then I signed him up for baseball with the Y while we were there, also for that summer, I think, and started and was coaching there. And this is kind of how I got into MYBA. Is we were playing with the Y, and I think the Y sports programs serve a purpose, but you can quickly outgrow the YMCA's programs.
Yes.
And we did very quickly. And I remember the first summer we were playing, there was a team out of Mansfield that had come down there to play, because MYBA didn't play summer ball at all.
Right.
And so they'd come down and play this little summer league at YMCA and go back. And they
just destroyed everybody, basically.
Well, they were destroyed. Supposedly were winning the leagues in Mansfield.
Yeah.
And they came down to YMCA, and of course were destroying teams, but we beat them.
Okay.
My little YMCA team beat them. And so the coach came to me afterwards and said, hey, let's merge teams and go play.
He wants to join forces.
You don't want to be in the YMCA any longer. Come join forces with us. Let's take your top 3 or 4, and I'll keep my top 6 or whatever. They were just going into coach pitch. I think at the time we played coach pitch at the Y, I believe. And then they were just starting coach pitch at MYB. So anyway, we did that. We merged with them because I was moving to Mansfield anyway. And I could tell
you weren't going to last very long in the Y.
That's not where we need to be. And so we played with them for a season or 2. And then it's just very hard. It's hard for me to be a follower. It's just something in me. I got to lead. And it was just so hard for me to be an assistant coach.
I think what it is, because I have a little bit of that as well, is that when you get into a situation and you see improvement that could happen in that situation, and you know that you have you're like, well, you should be doing this and they should be doing this. And whether it be a team or a league or what, it doesn't matter what's work, whatever, you have a tendency.
Yeah, that's definitely hard for any assistant coach, I think, to sit on. But for me, I don't know. It's uncomfortable for me not to be in charge.
Right.
And a lot of people are just the opposite.
Yeah.
Leadership scares them, makes them uncomfortable.
Sure.
And it doesn't me. Like
Right.
I have always wanted, I remember there's a friend of mine, Jason. I don't know if he'll end up seeing this or not, but I ran into him after many years from when we were kids. Mm-hmm. And one of the first things he said is, one thing I remember about you, you were always the leader. We were 5 years old. He said, no matter what we were doing, everybody did whatever Kevin did.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I had a bossy mentality or anything like that. There's something about me. I just gravitate towards leadership. And it was hard for me to do that. And it was a good team we were playing with that we came up here and played with. It wasn't so much that I saw things I wanted to do different. I just needed to be in charge. I wanted to be the head coach. And so after, I think 2 seasons, I went and moved on, started my own team. And then I think by the second season, I had 2 teams. And it wasn't long before after that, I had 3 teams. And that's how I got to MYBA.
Yeah.
As far as getting onto the board, I remember the first meeting that I went to, the coaches meeting, and it was just
a mess.
It was mad chaos.
Yep.
The coaches talked through the entire thing.
Right.
And I remember at one point, one of the board members at the time screamed at everybody just to try to get control of the room.
Right.
The other side of that is only probably 30% of the coaches were there.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was just a lot of opportunity. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And the guy that was the president at the time had just taken over, and his son had played with us on that team we had played with. And so that's how I knew him. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I remember not long after I came to MYBA, me and my family, or my girlfriend and her son at the time, we were sitting at a restaurant in South Arlington and just sat down to eat dinner. And all of a sudden I saw the MYBA board members coming in. They were having a board meeting. Mm-hmm. They were using a little extra room over there at that Dickey's on Cooper.
Yeah.
And I remember, I don't know what it was, but I felt a calling at that moment. I don't even know where it came from, but I told her at that moment, I said, I feel like I feel called to be a part of that. I feel called to be a part of the board. And I didn't do anything with it, but I told her that day. And then at the end of that season, the guy that I just mentioned that had taken over, he called me and he was just spent.
Right.
He said, I just wanted you to be the first to know I'm resigning. I can't do it anymore. He said, there's some things that need to change. He said, MYBA really needs you to come be a part of this. And it was weird because I'd never told anybody other than my girlfriend that I felt a calling to do that. And here he was calling me, like he didn't even know me that well, except for being a fellow parent on another team. He said, you really need to be a part of this. And so I think, I can't remember if they reached out to me. I think I may have reached out to them and just said, hey, I just learned that he's resigning. If I'm interested in learning more about the board process and being on the board, whatever. So they invited me to the next meeting. Long story short, I got voted in that night to take over as the president, and then voted in by the coaches later at the meeting.
So wait. So you had not served on the board at not at all one time.
I had not been a commissioner. I had not been on the board. I had not served in any capacity except to be a head coach for, I think, 1 or 2 seasons.
So you coached 1 or 2 seasons. Mm-hmm. You knew the former president. Just via playing on the team.
He was there for one.
Right.
He was there for one season. The president before him, I'm aware of who he is, but I really wasn't friends with him or anything.
And then the board members, there wasn't a board member that wanted to be president. Like, I mean, not that matters or doesn't matter, but you literally went in the first day and they were like, "Hey, we're going to make you president," even though
No, it wasn't that easy. They were going to run without a president, basically.
Okay.
And I had, like I said, I felt something in me calling me to do this. So I reached out to them and said, hey, I know that he's resigning. I'm trying not to name names, but he's resigning. And I'm interested in the position. Maybe. I don't even know if I was or not. I want to learn more about it. I've learned about it. I said, I'm not doing that. But they said, sure, come on. Why don't you come on in and we'll talk? And we went into the meeting. And after talking for a little while, they voted me in. Because honestly, at the time, the president, to be honest with you, the president was really just a figurehead
piece, whatever.
It was the mouth of the association, basically.
Yeah.
And everybody else was running it.
Yeah. You know about how
And
many
so it
kids
was
y'all have at
pretty
that point?
easy for them to say, yeah, let's let this guy handle all the phone calls and the emails. Because I'll be honest with you, one of the things that the outgoing president told me, he said, I'm just going to tell you right now, if you take this, be prepared. It will overwhelm your life
Right.
with phone calls and emails and all. He goes, that's part of the reason why I'm leaving. It's just too much.
Yeah.
And he was right.
Yeah.
The minute I got voted in and was a part of it, I got swamped.
Yeah.
And I came from a business background, and immediately things start jumping out to me that it doesn't have to be like this.
Right. There can be a better process.
Yeah. 80 to 90% of everything everybody was asking me was the same questions.
Right.
And none of it was on the website.
Right.
None of it. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, let's answer these questions on the website and cut down. So immediately I found out who's the webmaster, who's got to, and I got at it as an admin. I immediately started going in there and reshaping the website to answer a lot of these questions. And immediately that stuff started toning down because we were pushing people to the website and they were getting the information they needed. So there just needed to be some organization and some things like that. But yeah, that's how I ended up on the board.
Well, I see, you know, like I said, when I came in, started working with you guys on the board and then doing the football organization and stuff, I see a lot of, I've come across a lot of leagues and a lot of organizations and people that run organizations. And what you tend to find out, especially, and this happens a lot in baseball, I think specifically, because you get guys that, and when I say organization, it doesn't even have to be, you know, a league. It could be a club. It could be a group that has 4 or 5 teams at different age groups. But you get a lot of dads that have a passion for baseball or for whatever. Maybe they like to be in charge of stuff or whatever the case may be. And they get involved, but they run it like they kind of run their lives, which it's chaotic. There's very little communication. There's not a lot of interaction with, you know, we'll call them the customers, your parents, the people that are paying you or being involved in your group or whatever. And so when you actually have somebody that has a business background like you did, that steps into an organization and goes, okay, wait a minute, like we need to run this. This isn't the backyard association, especially because we're growing. We need to operate this like a business. This needs, you know, there needs to be accountability. There needs to be financials. All those things need to occur. Those are the ones that you tend to see have much greater success because it's approached that way and it's not approached just like as a hobby.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's what really took us to the next level. And when you have people volunteering their time to do things like be on the board or be a commissioner or whatever, there's different types of people. You have, you kind of hinted at somebody like me who just is gravitated to leadership positions.
Yeah.
But you have also people
just
that
do
it for selfish reasons.
Yeah.
You know, I want to get my kid into the best
on the best team. Yeah.
Or I want to be able to get the best players. And then you have those volunteers that it just sounds cool.
Yeah.
And they have zero qualification whatsoever. And that's where you tend to get a lot of chaos and being unorganized and someone that doesn't really have the skill sets to get things organized. And so, you know, I think we were very fortunate over the years to get a collection of people together like yourself. You know, Mike served on the board with us for several years and was a commissioner before that. It takes what really is important about running an organization like this, and probably most any organization, to have great success for the organization and for the organization to really thrive and be healthy and strong, is you have to be able to separate your own personal gains, your own personal benefits, anything like that. Because there's been several times where I personally had to make decisions that didn't benefit my team.
Right.
It benefited the organization. It was to the negative to my team, but it was good for the organization. Maybe it was better for the rec divisions because my team's always played in the select divisions. But it's very, very hard to separate yourself from that. And a lot of people can't, because in the back of their mind, they're thinking,
I'm giving my time.
How does this impact me?
Yeah.
How does this impact me?
Yeah.
And,
well, it's very similar in business. I mean, especially restaurants, right? I always would associate restaurants are always really hard to run because you have a lot of theft, because you have items that sit in your fridge, you have food and you have cash. And whenever you have food and cash and you have a bunch of employees, theft is always a concern, right? And so what happens is even well-intended people will put themselves in a bad position and be involved in something like that in a restaurant because they feel like they deserve it. You know what I mean?
Well, in the restaurant business, I think there's a couple of different kinds of thieves, really.
Sure.
They are thieves. there's one thief that, like you said, thinks they deserve it. I work here. I deal with this stuff every day.
Yes.
I can take food home. I can take
Yes.
cash home.
I'm not doing anything wrong. Like, I've earned it.
They program themselves to believe that's okay because
Yeah.
they're part of the system basically.
Yeah.
But then there's also thieves that just need opportunity. And
Oh, sure.
one of the things I used to spend quite a bit of time coaching our managers on was reducing the window of opportunity because, and I used to describe it like this. I would say, look, let me tell you this right now. If you were to put $100 bill on your front counter of the restaurant, but you stood there like this and you watched it, you could probably make sure it'd be there the rest of the day.
Yeah.
If you put it on the counter and turned your back for the rest of the day and only glanced at it every once in a while, you still might be there at the end of the day, maybe. If you decided to go work in the back of the restaurant and came back at the end of the day to see if it was there, probably won't be there.
Right.
So those are windows of opportunity. And
Right.
so what we always try to do is make that window as small as we can, because if it gets big enough, people jump through it. Even honestly, what normally would be good people,
it's
honest
human
people,
nature.
it's like, holy cow, I'm in the middle of a desert.
Yeah.
And there's a bag of money sitting right there. No one's been here for a year.
Well, the way
would you take it?
Yeah. Well, the way I used to explain,
but if you're in the same scenario where you're driving through the desert and traffic's going, and you see a bag of money on the road, you might try to get to the rifle owner, but you probably wouldn't take it.
No.
Well, that's the same thing. Well, windows of opportunity. It's like if the opportunity exists, and I think there's really no way anyone else is ever even going to know about this. Some people that normally would not have will now take that opportunity.
Well, and it's not even, I don't even think sometimes it's always malicious. It gets that way, but I don't think that's where it starts. Because
exactly.
What I used to say was, I would use this, it was very funny. I'd use the same analogy to some extent about $100, but I would put it in 20s. And I would say, if you had five $20 bills sitting on a table and you have somebody running your restaurant for you and you leave, and that it could be your brother, your best friend, it doesn't matter who it is. And something, you run out of milk, you run out of cheese, you run out of whatever. And that person's got to take that money and go purchase it because you're not there or you're not able to do it or whatever. And then they come back and it gets busy or whatever, and they forget to put it back. Again, no malice, no nothing. It was just the course of the day occurred where they weren't able to put that money back because they were like, I'll put it back later once I get it. And then maybe nobody notices, or it comes up short a little bit, but nobody says anything about it or whatever.
So I forgot to bring that back.
You're like, oh, I totally forgot about that. And then you go back again the next time, and they, again, no intent, but this time they're
that's
like,
how it starts.
Yeah. Oh, well, I got to go get this. And
that's what I say. There's different kinds of thieves, because one thief just looks for opportunity.
Yeah.
And then another thief, the opportunity just gets so blatant that it makes it really hard for some people to still do the right thing. You know, they say you do the right thing when nobody's looking. Some people, like, if they just really think nobody's ever going to be looking at this, good people will do bad things sometimes in those situations.
Well, and that same, I don't know if you want to call it trait or behavior or whatever, bleeds over into what we were talking about, you know, when you bring people into organizations, larger organizations that have, you know, a lot of moving parts and a lot of things happening, that same like feeling of either they deserve it or they have malice or whatever, that happens there too. And so it's okay, well, you know, I'm going to make sure that my team gets this uniform. I'm going to make sure that, you know, we change the rule in this division. So my team, and it's not always malicious. It's just that it's so hard to watch out for that because it is a pretty common human behavior. And it's hard to find people to get involved in organizations where there's money coming through that you don't, that you can trust and make sure that they're going to be taken care of, because, you know, it's just there and you have to be aware of it. And that's why it's hard to find really, really good people to do stuff.
It's human nature to think about yourself or think about me.
Yep.
But I think that's what really has not only strengthened MYBA, but, you know, MYBA is one of the few organizations that's really standing the test of time right now.
Yes.
A lot of organizations are shrinking big time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think MYBA is positioned in a good place. And the reason we've been kind of immune to that shrinkage is for a couple of reasons. One, I think people appreciate what we do. Mm-hmm. It's you know, the hardest part about making people understand is that it's not just about their child. And so overall, my 15 years of being here, every once in a while, you know, I usually just get lots of positive vibes from people constantly. Thank you. You guys are doing great. All these great things.
Yeah. I very rarely come across bad stuff.
Yeah. Every once in a while, I'll have somebody say something to me about like, oh, I work with so-and-so that used to play with MYBA. Well, she really doesn't like you. And I'm like, I can remember somebody saying this to me one time, and it's happened 2 or 3 times. I'm like, what do you mean they don't like me? I mean,
I've come across that.
Not that everybody has to like me, but it makes me wonder what happened about baseball that made them not like me. And they're like, I don't know. I don't know what happened. They just have a sour taste in their mouth they mention you by name. And I'm like, okay. So I'll go home and I'll Google that person's name, not Google. I'll look them up in my email search, because I have every email ever. And I'll find their name. And sure enough, every single time, it's because that person wanted me to treat their player different than every other player in the league.
Right.
And the number one complaint is someone gets on a team, everything's great, but then all of a sudden they don't agree with how much play time their son's getting, or where he bats in the order, or, they brought something up to the coach and they didn't like the way the coach responded. Now what they do is they reach out and say, I want to be on a different team.
Yeah.
That's the number one. It doesn't happen a whole lot. Like every season, it's about 5 people, 5 to 6 people. But those 5 or 6 people make such a big deal about it, and they don't understand why they can't move to another team. Now, if we didn't have the rules and the policies in place that we do, it'd be way more than 5 or 6.
Right.
Because here's what would happen. They want me to say, oh, you know what? That's not working out. Let's just move you over to this team that could take on another player. No big deal. Finish the season with them. Here's the problem. If you let one person do that, you have to let everybody do that.
Yes.
And so now every time, there's so many different situations.
Yeah.
You and I are on one team together, and our kids are walking out. We just had a great game, but then another coach comes up and says, hey, I noticed your kids play left field and center field on the Padres over there. How would you like to play shortstop and third?
Right.
Because I need one. I need shortstop third. I had 2 kids quit. So that coach is going to now try to take us from the team we're on. And if we say yes, now the team we came from is shorthanded.
Right.
And it snowballs.
It snowballs, yeah.
And that kind of stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
You take your kid to the batting cage, and because that's a lot of times how coaches network.
Sure.
Hey, kid's looking pretty good. Does he play? Oh yeah, he plays for the Red. Yeah. If you guys are looking for another team next season, hit us up. We're having tryouts. That's how that happens. Well, that happens at the park too. And so, or even at the hitting facility. And that literally, I've had parents tell me, oh, me and 2 other parents from the team, we ran into the coach of the da-da-da last night at the batting cages, and he really would like for our kids to come play for him. So we want to switch teams.
Right.
So they think that I should be able to take those 3 kids off of the team they're on, put them on another one. Because and what I've had to explain to them, I'm like, look, you don't want to agree with the fact that we won't let you switch teams, but I guarantee you, if I allowed this to happen and you were on a team that you were happy with, but 4 players were now leaving to go to another team and y'all were going to be shorthanded, now you're going to be 40 games, you'd still be complaining to me about why we allowed that.
Yeah, yeah.
So my point is, it's really hard to find people that can think about the big picture.
Yeah.
Not just think about themselves.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I had to be a part of making decisions in the past that wasn't necessarily in my team or even my son's best interest, but it was what's in the best interest of the association. And those are the people that can really do a great job on a board, or at least having that. It's really necessary, because if you don't, the wrong decisions get made. And I think some of that was happening before I was at MYBA. I don't think people had ill will or ill intentions, but they were misguided because of their own personal gains that were behind the decisions they were making.
Right.
And we really had to start pulling ourselves out of it and making sure that we weren't making decisions that were in our best interest. Because some of that was happening. I remember the guy that was the secretary at the time when I took over, he really was just a follower. He did he worked really hard, super nice guy. And I remember we had a different system for running the draft back then. All the kids went into a program that a former board member had built that was amazing. And I was scrolling through all the kids' registrations, and I saw a note in the notes column. I would see things like, make sure they end up on this team. Make sure they end up on this team. Make sure they end up on this team. I'm like, what is this? Like, this is a random draft. How do you have, make sure they're on this team, make sure on that team? So I called him and I said, hey man, what are these notes? I don't understand. He goes, well, those are where certain coaches have asked for these certain players or that player, and I said, well, this is a random draft. We can't do, it's no longer random if you're doing that. He's like, he really got distraught by it because he felt like he was stuck in the middle. He's like, look, I'm just doing what I'm told by other people.
Yeah.
And I said, we can't do it. I went and I deleted them. I said, absolutely, we're not doing this.
Yeah. There's
a way for people to influence or pick which team they're going to be on. But if you sign up for the draft,
then
you don't get to say, I only want to play on this team. That's not a draft.
Right.
And so it's things like that give the league major integrity because we do not influence the draft.
Right.
If you're not on a team, you go into a pool and the computer randomly assigns you to a team. It's a random draft. And as soon as we start having people saying, well, just make sure I don't play for this coach. Or I want to make sure we're on this team. Or coaches will send, even now it still happens. Occasionally somebody will say, hey, I protected my max. I can't add any more players, but I really want this kid who played for me last year. You need to move up and play in a select division because that's what those are. That would be a select team if I let you do that. And so you signed up for a non-select division. You select for a draft league. So it's stuff like that it's everybody likes to think about me and how it influence. When I say me, themselves, how it influences them, and it's really hard to pull yourself out of that. It really is.
Well, it's tough because when, like in that situation with the draft, whenever you have parents from the outside looking in and they don't know, there's been so much stuff throughout, different youth sports organizations over the years that everybody always just has a little bit of distrust for things. They're just like, well, especially when things aren't going their way, right? My team's not very good. Why is that team so good? They must have cheated. They had to have done something. And so they make those assumptions automatically in their brain that, oh, well, this, there's definitely some,
people do make assumptions about how things are working, but there's things like that I think we do a pretty good job of educating people how that works. I rarely get that. I don't know if anybody's ever said, this is a draft league. How did that team get so good? Because people understand how it works and they see that it works that way. We really do have a random draft.
No, but that's my point. My point is that with MYBA, it was never that situation.
Right.
Like I was there, I experienced it, I went through it. So it never became a problem because you guys stuck to your guns, because you're like, hey, look, regardless of the situation, regardless of and that's the uncomfortable part sometimes, is there are situations that come up that you can say, I mean, I understand where you're coming from.
They lay the guilt trips on me big time. I'll have a parent say, look, my son is on a team, got drafted to a team that's been together all this time, or maybe even a select team that they signed up for. We met this coach, and my kid plays right field every single game, but there's another coach that will put him at shortstop. It would be so great for his development. It's a much better coach, and he'll get to play a better position, and he's going to bat higher in the lineup. It'll be so great for my kid.
Right.
But I have to say no.
Right.
Because if I do it for that, they just cannot take themselves out of it.
Yeah.
And then then the emails turn hateful.
Right.
And what's the number one? You're going to be able to answer this question, I guarantee you.
Mm-hmm.
When almost every single time, if I send a parent the response that they don't want.
Yes.
They asked and I gave them the response that wasn't the one they wanted.
Right.
They respond back with, wait a minute, I thought it was
all about the kids.
Exactly. Yeah. Every single time.
Yes.
It's in our logo.
Yes.
It's all about the kids.
Yes.
And that's what they think they can leverage that.
Yes.
I thought it was all about the kids.
Yeah.
And I always respond back and I say, it absolutely is, but it's about all the kids.
Right.
It's all about all kids. And we can't, those few people that have gotten upset, it's usually because they want us to make exceptions for their child.
Yeah.
And we just can't, because the only way to be fair about that is do it for everybody.
And which I think when people lose scope sometimes, how many, I know the number changes, but let's just say in the spring season when it's the busiest, about how many kids are you guys sitting at right now?
1,400,
okay.
1,500.
And
it kind of bounces between 1,300 and 1,600 in the spring.
And then in the state of Texas, when we're talking about a youth organization like tied to cities like this one is, there aren't that many that have that kind of size. I mean, in the entire state,
I'm not aware of a single youth baseball association, just baseball only,
right, that
is larger than us in the state of Texas. I'm not aware of one. Now, there might be, people will say, "Oh yeah, look at this tournament, yeah. And I'm like, "Well, that's a tournament."
Right.
I'm talking about rec baseball league.
Right.
I believe I'm not saying there's not one, but I'm not aware of a single one that has more participants. And I like what I was kind of getting at earlier is that I think the way we do things is a part of that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We also have an advantage that, if there's an association down the road that gets down to, 500 or 600 players, which a lot of them are now, well, they can't offer variety.
Right.
At 1,500 kids,
you can have an
not
A
only,
division.
Not only can your 9-year-old
yeah.
play just with 9-year-olds,
yeah.
but they can play in the beginner division, the A-Rec division.
Yeah.
They can play in a select division that's a rec division, or they can play in the AA comp division with straight up AA. There's 3 different divisions, 3 different
yep.
skill levels just at 9U. Whereas when you got 500 kids in the association, it's like,
12
well, not only do we not have those 3 divisions, yep. but 11s and 12s are going to play together. And if there's still not enough, we're going to add the 9-year-olds to them, yep. or the 10-year-olds. So we do have a luxury being as big as we are, that that we have that protection. But I also
But that was
believe,
built.
but
That
yeah,
didn't
it was
happen
because we run such a good
Yeah.
program. But then we also have the situation where players from those other areas come play with us
Yep.
because it is a better organization
Yeah.
and it's run better. And we're not perfect. I've never said to anybody, hey, I do believe we're the premier league in Texas, or at least North Texas. I'll never say that we're as good as it gets because I'm always looking for ways to be better.
Yeah.
Every single email that someone sends me, you and I talked about one earlier, even that one is ridiculous. When somebody sends a suggestion, as ridiculous as that suggestion was,
Yeah.
I still said, you know what? Maybe I don't know. Let's ask the coaches.
Yeah.
And I went and talked to the coaches, and every one of them said, absolutely, that's ridiculous. So we are always looking for ways to be better, and we do find ways to be better. Sometimes we'll hear about either it's somebody's idea or something that they saw somewhere else, and we'll implement that. But I think it's a pretty well-oiled machine. And people will ask me, and hopefully, I don't know if this is on your list or not, but people will ask me, man, what's the hardest part about running a league of that many kids? And by the way, there's other associations that have, like Burleson, they have those kinds of numbers, but they also have cheerleaders and softball and football. It's all of that. I'm talking just baseball.
Yeah.
They'll ask me, so what's the hardest part about running an association like that? Because it's got to just be so time consuming. Because honestly, it could be a full-time job for sure. But what I tell people is we really have running the organization down pretty well. It's not perfect. We're always looking to get better. It's a pretty well-oiled machine. The hardest part about my job is running the adult daycare.
Yeah. Yes.
That's the hardest part.
And
again, it's, we have if you have 1,500 kids in a season, even if every player only had 2 parents, you're talking about 3,000 parents.
Yeah.
But they have multiple
step parents.
There's split families.
Yep.
So you're talking about on any given spring season about 4,000 parents.
Yeah.
And out of 4,000 parents, only having 4 or 5.
Yeah. That was my point.
That are discontent. But the problem is those 4 or 5 are just a pain in the, what they love to just be the squeaky wheel and try to leverage and get their ways. And so you have to be not only thick-skinned to that, but you have to learn how to address it and move on.
Yeah.
They almost always try to engage you. What they want to do is provoke you enough that you'll respond in a bad enough way that they can hold that against you, and now they get their way.
Yep.
So we always, I'm always, and I have to remind myself this sometimes, but I'm always coaching others too. Don't let it get personal. Nicole, who's our admin, who does a great job. Every once in a while, somebody will get under her skin. I'll say, hey, just don't let it get personal. It's not you, it's them. Respond and just give them, I'll either take it over or I'll just tell her, just respond without emotion and move on.
Well, that's what I learned working with you doing this. And that's why, when we would sit in board meetings, there would be topics that would come up that we would say, and I can't think of one specifically, but, maybe 2 or 3 of us would be like, no, I think we should do this. And you would be against it in that particular situation. But you were always open-minded to it. There was never a point where you would say, no, this is how we're going to do it. There might've been a couple instances only when you were like, hey, look, I've done this. I've tried this 6 times. This is what happened here. This is what happened here. That happened for sure. But just the willingness to hear the opinions and like you said earlier, you sent the email out. Okay, well, I don't agree with this at all, but let me see what everybody else thinks. Maybe I don't know everything. Right. You know what I mean? And I think that that gets there's a little bit of a misconception about you sometimes because you're very open to all kinds of ideas and different ways to do things. But when you've been doing something for 15 years,
you learn some stuff.
Yeah. And the same situations have come up a few times. So you've kind of gone through this enough to know,
and that's what I'll do is I like to, I think a great leader, part of what makes a great leader is recognizing the fact that although a great leader usually has to have some great ideas, not all the best ideas come from you.
Yeah.
And so you have to surround yourself with people that have great ideas. And so it's really a bad characteristic for a leader to, pull rank or my way or the highway. And I don't think I've ever once pulled rank. I've never been on the other side of the aisle and just said, you know what, we're going to do it no matter what. I've never done that. There's been times where I've said, look, I want to do what the majority does. There's been several times where I've said, we'll do what the majority wants to do.
Yep.
Here's my opinion. And we would do it. And most of the time I was right.
Yes.
But sometimes I'm sure I wasn't. And, but yeah, I think you have to be able to do that. But that does happen sometimes where someone that comes in, I've been doing this for 15 years and you got somebody that comes along, only been a part of the association for a year. And they're like, oh, why don't we just halfway through the season, let everybody switch teams if they want?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let me kind of clue you in on what would happen.
Right.
And I give them that same scenario. You coach a team, right?
Yeah.
what if we said there's going to be a free agency for a week in the middle of the season and 5 of your players decided to go play for somebody else because for whatever reason, they just didn't want to play for you.
Yeah.
They didn't like you as a coach. They can go play better position, whatever. 5 players left. Now what?
Right.
And they're like, I'd have to start forfeiting games. That's right.
Yeah.
First, though, they would say something like, well, NYBA would give me 5 more. No, NYBA doesn't have 5 more. We don't have kids sitting there we're saying, hey, just wait.
Yeah.
You know, I'll call you if we need you. So you have to help people see through. And then they're like, oh, I didn't think about that. I didn't really think it through. But yeah, there's been lots of things that through trial and error, we've learned over the years, and there's a wealth of knowledge that a lot of us have. There's lots of things I'm sure that you know that, you know, somebody new to the organization wouldn't know. And,
well, I mean, when I came in originally, I'm sure, and I don't even remember all of it, but you know, I always have ideas about things. And I remember, you know, they always say, you remember how you feel about things, not necessarily the details of everything that happens all the time. We use that a lot in my business because we talk about making people happy with the experience because they don't remember every detail about their loan or buying the house, but they realize at the end that, man, this was a good experience or it wasn't. And my experience in dealing with you is that I'm sure I had a bunch of, oh, we should try this and we should try this and we should try this because I know I'm that way. And every single time that I remember, it was always like, okay, well, that's not bad. Or what I really learned from you was okay, great. So what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to do it? Because
tell me how that's going to happen.
That was the thing that I ran into the hardest part running the football organization when I did it. But I already knew it. So it was good going in because of you. Was people would come in all the time. We'd add board members like, we should do this. We should do this. We should do this. And I would go, great. When are you going to start? Like, what are you going to do to make that happen? And then that tends to kind of quell the ideas a little bit.
You kind of at least got to be a part of the solution to that idea.
Right.
Or executing it. And, you know, and there's lots of things we can get into the whole, you know, struggle with volunteers, but things like, you know, it's always been one of my dreams to do a big opening day. And we've tried to do it twice. And here's the thing about volunteers is all throughout the season, as I'm helping people.
Well, and real quick before you go down that road, I want you to talk about how everybody in the league, except for 2 people,
are volunteers.
Yeah.
So we have the umpires.
Nobody gets paid.
The umpires are paid. The umpires are paid. And then the director of umpires is paid. Our admin is paid. And then we pay someone to run concessions.
Right.
And so there's reasons for that. Everybody else, coaches, commissioners, board members,
president,
nobody's getting paid. In fact, to be honest with you, for 15 years now, I've been paying to be the president because it costs me money.
Yeah.
It costs me gas money.
Yeah.
Especially if I have to pick up the Ranger and take it to the shop over in Haltom City. I don't expense that to the organization.
Right.
In fact, when my son was playing, one of the there's very few perks to being on the board or being a commissioner, but one of the few is that your player plays for free.
Yeah.
I never took that. I always paid for my son to play only because I never wanted people to question why I was doing it. He's doing it for the perks.
I always paid for my son to play in the football league.
There's not really any perks. There's a few, but I don't even take those. So it costs me money to do it because I want to do it for the right reasons. But yeah, a lot of times I think people, I'll never forget. Actually, it happened a couple of weeks ago where someone called me. And a lot of times if I don't recognize the number, I won't answer it only because it's probably a random parent from baseball. And so I can get back to him relatively quickly, but I'm at work right now or whatever. But I actually happened to answer this call. And the guy said, hey, I sent an email. Nobody ever responded. I can't remember what it was about. Let's just say it was maybe it was a coach wanting to pick up rings at the end of the season. I'm just making that up. But they said, I sent an email. Nobody's responding. I'm like, oh, well. Because that's one of the things I pride myself on. We're pretty good with communication.
Yeah.
It's usually the very first compliment somebody gives us when they first come to NYBA is, hey, man, the communication here is great. It's very well organized. Communication is great. So I hated to hear that. The guy's saying, I sent an email.
Ball gets dropped sometimes.
Immediately I'm thinking, oh, maybe it went to spam. What happened?
Yeah.
And I said, oh, I'm sorry. I said, what's your name? And so I opened up an email. And before I could even search, I saw that he just sent the email 20 minutes before that. And it's like, I think people really don't realize that this isn't my job.
Yeah.
You know, I have a full-time job. I run a business. At one time I ran a, 110 restaurant chain, up to 110 restaurants at one time. I'm not doing this. I'm not getting paid and I'm not doing this full time. I'm squeezing it in.
Yeah.
But in my free time. And, So sometimes we do have to remind people that, and I don't throw it in people's face because I signed up for this.
Yeah, totally.
I don't complain about it.
No.
I am not complaining that I have to spend my free time running this. I signed up for this, but I asked for a little because I reply to emails probably as quickly as most people reply to text.
Yeah,
I'm still pretty quick with it, but some people are just very, there was somebody not too long ago started emailing on a Saturday night because he couldn't get a hold of anybody. And I'm like, it's Saturday night,
Right.
nobody's they were complaining because they couldn't get hold of Nicole.
Yeah.
I've emailed Nicole twice and she's not emailing back. I'm like, well, the website clearly says she's a part-time employee that works Monday through Friday, normally 9 to 1.
Yeah.
This is Saturday night.
Right.
So, it's a great reminder.
Yeah.
I don't get paid to do this. And when I first came to MYBA, there was not a paid admin. There was a paid director of umpires, and the umpires got paid. And let me touch on that real quick, why we paid the umpires, because the umpire business is tough.
Yeah, I was about to say
that's a whole nother podcast.
Yes.
We
have a shortage of umpires.
Scott and
shortage of
that. There's a huge there's a shortage of everything right now.
Every official,
but every
football, basketball, baseball, every sport, and there's reasons for that.
Exactly.
Very much. Yeah,
big time.
Yeah.
But you can go up the road to some of the other associations, and when your game is being called on Saturday, it's being called by a fellow coach, a dad in the league, and their son.
Yeah.
And which is great, that's sure. Like I said, the YMCA serves a purpose.
Right.
At MYBA, what we want is officials that have been through training, don't have any kind of skin in the game.
Yeah.
You're getting a real umpire. So we do pay the umpires, and they all go through training. And I always have to remind people, because somebody will say, anytime somebody complains about a call in a game, every time, I already know right away who lost.
Yes, of course.
Rarely does a coach call and say, hey, I had a great game tonight. I won, but by the way, this umpire stinks.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. It's always because they lost the game. But
which doesn't mean, by the way, umpires make mistakes.
Exactly. That's what
all
I
the
tell
time.
them. I'm like, look, in Major League Baseball, that is the elite.
Yes.
Like every umpire, like if their dream is to umpire for a career is to get to the major leagues, that's the best of the best. And now they have instant replay.
Yes.
And still then, sometimes the next day, people are going, they got this wrong.
Yes.
Even with instant replay, they got it wrong. So our umpires don't have that. It's usually a young, 16-year-old kid who played baseball for MYBA, and now it's his first job is calling games.
Yep.
We have people that have been calling umpires for a while. We've got people that are retired. They from 16 to 60, we have people out there calling games.
They get paid, but they don't get paid that much.
They're not making a living at it.
Yes.
They're doing it
for a hobby.
It's a little fun. Bit it's a gift, a token of appreciation for coming and doing the game. But I would say 90% of those guys are doing it just because they love being at a youth baseball game.
Yeah.
And so that's why they do that. We've always paid them. It wasn't long after I'd been here. Back in the day, the concession stand was run by volunteers. And so every season it was kind of a lottery. Every team, it got to a point where we had more teams than we had
spots.
Not that there were games. So, because we were growing so fast. So some teams didn't get it, but most teams had one night they had to cover concession stand. Well, the problem with that is every night you got new people running it. So it's never going to run well ever. It's it's imagine going to McDonald's and every single day,
everybody's new.
All the employees changed, the manager and everybody.
Yeah.
So we had new employees every single day. So that wasn't good. Nobody wanted to do it.
No. It was being forced upon
We started offering a buyout thing where it's like, hey, if your team doesn't want to do it, if they just want to pay I don't remember what it was, $100 for the night. So teams started doing that. Like, hey, when nobody wants to work it, let's just pay everybody put in $10 and we'll pay it. There's so many teams doing that. Said, look, I came from the restaurant business. Let's just run it like a restaurant.
Yes.
Let's put the products in there people want. Let's price it accordingly. And then let's get some kids in there working their first job.
Yeah.
And it works out perfect.
Yes.
So now nobody has to work concession stand. They can go watch their kids game.
Which especially in Mansfield, parents love. My wife's on the booster club for Webster Wildcats, and she's president of Booster Club, and finding parents to run concession stands at the junior high games, and now she's involved with the high school watch because we do volleyball too, is the bane of her existence. Because and I get it. Nobody wants to do it. And the whole thing about volunteers, what I was going to say about why you have to have some people that have jobs that are paid is because, and I used to tell the board this with the football association, and I would say, what are you going to do? Like if the volunteer doesn't show up and doesn't come in to do what you need them to do, what you're going to fire the volunteer? Like, I don't know. Like,
plus, I mean, we got to a size where it just wasn't fair to expect somebody to do the job without any pay.
Yes. There's a lot of,
like,
especially
we eventually, not only we pay people to work the concession stand, but we needed somebody to manage that. And so we started paying a director of concessions.
Yeah.
And then eventually we grew to the point where we needed an admin.
Yes.
It's like, look, it's
a lot of people.
There's even if we did a good job of putting things on the website and cutting down on the email, but again, with 1,500 players, 4,000 parents in the league, even if only 5% of them are sending you an email, that's a lot of emails. And so,
well, plus all the board members are all volunteers. So they're all at their job and they're working.
And most of us run businesses.
Yes.
You had your own business. Dwayne has his own business. Chris has his own business. Daniel's a full-time pastor.
Yeah.
We needed to hire a part-time admin, and Nicole's been great. That's been a huge benefit to the association. And we didn't do it to make being on the board easier. We did it because the association had grown so much. It was just the right thing to do.
Yeah.
We weren't, when NYBA started back in the 70s or whenever it was, for years, it was just, in fact, back then, I don't know if you know this or not, that when baseball started, when NYBA started, it was everything. It was basketball.
Oh, really?
It was baseball.
Huh.
I think they even did girls softball for a while. But then as it grew a little bit, Mansfield baseball, whatever it's called, I don't think it exists anymore, but it did for a while. The Basketball Association did.
Oh, yes.
And girls softball, all that kind of peeled off. So I guess probably in the beginning it was called Mansfield Youth Association or something. But we grew to the point where, just like there was a need to run it. Honestly, I think even the smallest of associations should run it like a business. But in that same wheelhouse, we needed to bring on an admin. So like I said, it's a pretty well-oiled machine, and everybody knows their duties. One of the other greatest things I think we did early on was there were always commissioners, but when I got here, the commissioners really didn't do anything except get to pick the players they want and the fields they wanted to practice on. They weren't doing anything.
Right.
And so we restructured what a commissioner's duties were and made it worth doing.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, the greatest benefit to being a commissioner, aside from, fulfilling your desire to have a servant heart, is being able to network. Mm-hmm. Being the president of NYBA, I knew tons of people. So if I ever did need a player, I knew who didn't have a team and who was out there, and they knew me, and it made it very easy. And so that's honestly one of the great things about being a commissioner, is being able to network and meet and learn so many people. It really helps you be able to put together a decent team.
So as big as the organization is today, it actually is smaller than what it has been in the past. And you've been doing this for, like I said, 15 years, but overall, you start to see, I dealt with it very heavily in football for many, many reasons, but overall you start to see a little bit of a decline in participation. Now I think baseball's a little different in that baseball has very much become, even more so than I think some of the other sports, a business, because there's so many little baseball clubs where you pay to be on this team and you pay to be on that team and you play in these tournaments. And, I experienced AA tournaments or AAA tournaments and major tournaments. And, you go to some of these AA tournaments and you really have a bunch of rec kids out there that are playing in this tournament, getting destroyed because you have
teams able to say they played a tournament,
right? But they're on this select team and they do it. So there's an aspect of that for sure. I don't want to get into that, but really and truly, why do you think we've seen a decline overall in sports participation, especially with all of the benefits? I mean, that I think that playing sports gives kids.
Yeah, I think I have a good theory on that. And before I jump into that, I do want to say that NYBA spiked in participation up around 2,200 kids at one time. It lasted for about a year or two. But what happened after that is the other associations started taking notes.
Yeah.
Like there's one down the street that basically just tried to clone what we were doing.
Right.
And so we took a bunch of kids from other associations all at one time.
Yeah.
And then they started changing their programs, and they got some of them back. So we've actually been at, for spring season around 1,400, 1,500 kids for a very long time now. Now you may say, well, there's no growth there. Well, but we're not shrinking. We're not shrinking, and everybody around us is.
Yeah.
And
the pool of kids
it's not
is
just
less.
baseball.
Yeah.
It's softball. Softball's and really, it's a scary situation. The numbers that they've gotten down to, they've made a comeback a little bit in the last couple of years, but girls softball is shrinking. Hockey participation shrinking, volleyball participation shrinking.
Football.
Overall, there are fewer kids playing youth sports than there used to be. And some people will say, oh, it's because they're all playing select. No, They're playing select. 15 years ago, there were select teams too, and select teams outgrew.
So I think it was a little different, but because I think there's more, because it's more of a business now.
There's always been a mentality that if you're going to make the high school team, you got to leave rec ball.
Yeah.
Which I do not agree with at all. When I coached my kids, no one ever paid me to coach. It was not a paid situation. And again, I'm not knocking these clubs or anything like that. That's great. I think they fill a niche, and there are certain players that they benefit from being in.
Yep.
That's not how I ran my teams. Nobody paid me. We played MYBA every single season. We played spring and we played fall.
Mm-hmm.
We'd play a couple of tournaments during the spring, during each one of those seasons, and we'd play World Series in the summer.
Yeah.
And that's all we did. I didn't want to burn my kids out. I didn't want to burn my parents out. I didn't want to burn me out.
Yeah.
But I wanted to set them up to succeed. And every single one of my players who played with me forever that tried out for the high school team, every single one of them made it. Every single one of them. And we never went to Steamboat Springs. We never went down to Florida.
Right.
We never did any of that.
Yeah.
And it always gets me because I'll hear of a team, oh, we're going to Steamboat this summer. I'm like, you're losing here.
Yeah.
The teams here are beating you.
Yes.
I mean, I can understand. It's like, hey, look, it doesn't
We've
matter what tournament
everybody.
we play here.
Yeah.
We're beating everybody. We're dominating everybody. And then maybe you need to go see some new competition, but you're losing games here.
Yeah.
It's not about being able to face new teams all the time. It's just about get your kids on the field, throw the ball, hit the ball, catch the ball. That's what baseball is.
Yeah.
Get them out there playing ball. Get them, and that was my mentality.
Yeah.
We'll play the MYBA league, but we'll play in the appropriate league.
Just play a lot.
By the time my kids were 13 years old, they were all playing in the high school division at MYBA because they were better than the rec teams that were in 13U, but there was a place for them still to play. So we never outgrew out MYBA, but I do understand why some people leave. But the whole mentality of if you're not out playing tournaments every single weekend on a select team that you're paying $3,000 a season to be on, you're not going to make the high school team. That's baloney.
Yeah.
You're not going to make. I'm not saying you're wasting your money. I'm just saying that's baloney. That's not the only way to get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. There are a lot of club teams and stuff like that. But here's the culprit, in my opinion. And people at first can be like, "That's not it." If you think about it long enough, and you think about examples of kids that you know personally, you'll start to agree with it. It's electronics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's electronics. And my son has gone through, somewhat of what you might call an addiction to electronics. Most every kid does.
Yep.
And, when I was a kid, which was a long time ago, everybody wanted to play baseball. Because what else are you going to do? If I don't play baseball today, I got to go find a stick and draw in the dirt or something.
Bored out of your mind.
I got to find something to do. Well, you wanted to play baseball. Well, now baseball's competing with gaming.
Yeah, MLB,
and YouTube,
the show. Yeah.
and all these different things,
TikTok.
And making TikToks and all this, watching TikTok, and then also there's way more single parents and split families than there were when I was a kid. Also, I'm not saying they didn't exist, but it's way more prevalent now. And so, if you can just imagine for a minute, a single mom who works a full-time job that has a couple of kids, and she's trying to do the right thing and put them into baseball or whatever. And every day she comes home and she says, hey, when it's practice day, it's time to go to practice and get ready. And the kid's like, I just want to, Mom, not tonight. I'm tired. They say I'm tired.
Yeah.
But with that, I'm tired to a teenager or any child over about 5, I'm tired means I want to play games.
Yeah.
I want to do something on my iPad.
Yeah.
And then Mom's sitting here going, boy, what I wouldn't give to pour a glass of wine and turn on the Hallmark channel.
Yep.
And I'm not blaming moms at all.
Dad's the same
too.
thing. Yeah.
Dad works all day long.
I'm tired.
Comes
I don't feel
home.
like jacking with
and
it.
even in,
I don't want to fight.
families that haven't split up.
Yeah.
Dad comes home from working hard. Mom's been working hard. Mom wants to pour a glass of wine and dad wants to turn on Sports Center. And it gets real easy to say, okay, we won't go tonight. And then when it's next time it's ready to sign up, it's like, you didn't even go to half the practice last season. Let's not register. That I wholeheartedly believe. It's not 100% of the problem, but I believe it is the majority of the reason why fewer and fewer kids are playing youth sports is because parents, and I did it too.
Mm-hmm. It's easier.
It becomes, you want to give your kids
if our parents had it, they absolutely would have taken advantage of it.
And plus you want to give your kids what they want. You don't want to feel like you're forcing them to play. And that's what it ends up feeling like, is because baseball and girls softball, basketball and football is now competing with Fortnite.
Well, and what's hard too is whether people want to admit it or not, is parents are judgy. So if you show up with your kid to baseball practice and they don't want to be there and they hate it and they're miserable and they're acting a fool,
the kid will show it.
Right. And then the parents are going, why are you dragging your kid out here to do this? Why are you reliving your life through your kid? And you're like, and some parents are like, that's not what I'm doing. I'm getting my kid out of the house so he's not sitting in front of his computer screen all day long. This is my goal. I don't care about being a baseball player. I'm just getting him out of the room, because what I dealt with, so I had Nintendo when I was a kid. I remember specifically playing with my buddies. We were playing Mario and Zelda and all that stuff. But the difference in those games then and these games now is like, I tell my son all the time, if I played Super Mario Brothers on my Nintendo, and I lost, unless you had the little code, but if you lost the 3 or 4 guys, you start all the way back at the beginning. And even with the 99 guys that you got with the special code,
now you got to keep going.
Yes, you would die and you would get bored. You're like, okay, this sucks. You throw in your machine, and then you go outside.
And it also was more about just beating your highest score,
right? And now you play with your friends.
Just what level can I get to? And like you said, you start over every time.
Yeah.
Now it's
well, you're all your friends
on new adventures and talking to your friends. And
yeah,
I really believe that's hurting youth sports more than anything. And the kids just want to be on their devices. And I don't really know. I would love, actually, I've thought about at one point trying to put together a committee of other, whether it's board members of other associations, just people that are really embedded in youth sports, and trying to brainstorm to see if there's things that we could do to help curve this. Like I said, MYBA has been immune to that.
Yeah.
Because as other associations are shrinking, they have fewer options to. I mean, there's some seasons where some of these associations they tap out. They say we don't have enough players to play this season.
Yeah.
Come back next season. And so we've become immune to it because of our size.
Mm-hmm.
If we weren't as big as we were, we would be going through some of that shrinkage, I think.
Well, I mean, I encountered it with my son, and not so much with my daughter, but definitely with my son, where he, that stuff's it is designed purposefully to be addictive. I mean, that's how it's created. They're figuring out ways to get you on the
Facebook does it to grown-ups.
Yes.
Did you ever watch what's this, the
Social Dilemma?
Yeah.
Same.
I mean, they're doing it to us.
Yeah, same thing.
It's the same thing.
So this was constantly a struggle. And what happens at home too, and my wife and I would disagree, especially when he was younger. She understands now, and we're on the same page with it. But for a lot of his growing up years, we would run into that. I don't want to go today. I don't want to play today. I don't want to feel like doing this. And she was like, he doesn't want to go. Why are you forcing him to go? I'm like, because it's not that he doesn't want to go. It's that he wants to sit up there and play that video game.
And my son did the same thing. I had to confront him on is that he got to a point in his life where everything was weighed against playing games. So if I ever said, and when he was small, I'd be like, hey, we're going to go to the lake house, the family lake house for the weekend. There was no, of course that's where I'm going to go. My cousin's going to be there. Well, now it's like everything is, if I say something like, hey, we're getting together on Sunday. Well, what are we going to be doing? What's
right?
Because he's going to,
is that going to be better?
He's not telling me, but what he's doing is he's comparing it to gaming.
Right.
And if what we were going to do didn't sound more fun than gaming, he would say, I really just want to stay home. I'm tired and I just want to relax. And
well, I ran an experiment with my wife, and we did this on purpose, where I said, okay, my son did something. I don't remember what it was. He got in trouble. And I'm like, we're going to take his PlayStation and his iPad. He was younger. He was probably 7. And we're going to take it away for 2 weeks because of this thing that he did. And I said, I promise you, within 2 or 3 days, whatever it is that you need him to do, or you want him to do, or we're going to do this, he will be the most amenable, agreeable kid that you've ever come across. And it's exactly what happened, because the moment that I shut that thing off, and it wasn't an option anymore. Now it's not a choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once it wasn't a choice, then if I said, hey, we're going to go to football practice, or hey, we're going to go, I need you to help me outside in the yard, or whatever the case may be. Well, he was so bored out of his mind that he was like, yeah, sure, whatever. Like I'm down.
It wasn't part of the equation anymore.
No, it wasn't. And again, it's not, when we talk about this kind of stuff, I think sometimes, it gives the impression that, I did the same thing. Like, I'm not judging anything. I'm just saying that this is what it is.
Yeah. It's where our society has evolved to. That's a part of our lives. And, I was talking to somebody the other day, just things like our smartphones, and can you imagine what smartphones are going to be like in 20 years? Because if you think back 20 years ago, they didn't exist.
Yeah.
So in the next 20, like
chip in your head.
It's hard to even fathom where this stuff is going, but yeah, it's just where it's a reality. It's where we are. It's a reality that people stream TV now and watch YouTube videos instead of watching CBS on Tuesday night, It's just where we've gone. But I would hate to look back and think, if we just done this,
well, and I think
maybe it could have helped the situation. Because what I'm not, what I don't, kids, I don't think that gaming and all that's the devil.
no.
It's just so addictive
Yes.
that it's hard for
It's
them to
all
balance.
encompassing.
You got to have balance, and it's hard for kids, the youth, to make those decisions about balance. And then as a parent, it's hard to not give your kids what you want. Like we've talked about it. If you're dragging them out to practice and all they're thinking about is I want to get home to game, it makes you look like a bad parent.
Well, and that was the thing that I just realized this, I want to say relatively recently within the last couple of years, but I was always a big believer when my kids were growing up. I wanted to give them choices because I wanted my thought process was I'm going to give you a choice to teach you how to learn how to make choices, because some choices are bad and some choices are good. So it was kind of a thing where I would want to say, hey, look, I'm going to give you this opportunity to make a choice. Now, more often than not, they would make the wrong choice, or the choice that wasn't there that I wasn't wanting them to make. Yeah. And I would get frustrated because I was like, you need to make this choice. And they're like, I don't want that. I want to do this. And I'd already given them the choice. So it was kind of like, can't go back on it. But then as they got older and I got it better as a parent, I tell them all the time, they're science experiments that we're all just figuring out how this stuff works. But as they got older, I started to give them actually less choices, because I'm like, no, I got to focus more on your habits and behaviors rather than your ability to make decisions, because your brain's not functioned yet, or is not fully developed yet. So I'm not going to give you a choice. You're going to do this. This is what we're going to do.
I'm going to steer you a little bit.
Yes, I'm going to steer you in this direction. And I would tell them, like, there isn't an option here. Like, this is what we're going to do. But I would tell them why. I would say, you're going to do this because of this, this, and this. And there would be choices at some point, kind of like, I think a lot of parents say this, like, we're going to play baseball this season. And when I get to the end of the season, if you decide you don't want to play baseball anymore, then that's your choice. But you're going to go through it first. You're not giving
experience it first.
Yes. We're not going to give you the choice of not doing it. We're going to give you the choice of going through the experience and then electing to not do it after that. But then what I would also add on top of that is I would tell the kids, but you're not going to do nothing. So don't think that because you eliminate this choice, that means you get to just sit around and do nothing all day long.
Exactly. Yeah, it's tough. It's a different day we live in, but the good news is there are still lots of kiddos out there that do want to play. And there's different kinds of kids that want to play. There's kids that want to play that really don't have much natural ability to play sports. They're just not athletic.
Yeah.
But they have a lot, and that's why our rec league is so good.
Yeah.
Because there's a place for kids like that to play and still get to experience baseball. You don't have to be the best shortstop in Mansfield to get to play baseball. But then there's a league for those that are a little more advanced. They're not necessarily the studs of the area, but then there's a place for the studs to play too.
Why do you think there's been a thing that's developed? And I don't have perspective on it, so maybe this existed before. How old are you again?
Old.
Okay, come on.
56.
50. Okay, so you got 10 years on me. So 12 years about. So you may have a different perspective on this or no, but I don't remember being a kid having parents be so wrapped up in the sports side of sports. And what I mean by that is like, the best way I can explain is when I was coaching my kids playing baseball and football and basketball, one of the things that I would always tell the parents is you have to remember that if you're looking at this as I'm doing this so my kid can play in high school, or I'm doing this so my kid can play in college, or I'm doing this, for whatever, that puberty is a game changer. And when your son or daughter hits that age, it doesn't matter that they've played on this select club team for the last 10 years and that this kid has never picked up a bat. Because when puberty sets in and that kid's hand-eye coordination and his size and his speed catch up or exceed everybody else's, the fact that he didn't play baseball for 10 years and your son did is going to make no difference to anybody else. And so I think, I'm sure I had my moments, but I always looked at the youth stuff. And this is why we never played until recently, really getting into the club side of things. Now my son's in junior high, we're working to get to high school, that kind of thing. But prior to that, we played tournaments, but it was always a little family group of parents that hung out. It wasn't, we weren't ultra competitive. And we actually lost a few people here and there because I wasn't that way. I'm like, I'm not trying to win every tournament. I want them to learn. I want them to grow. I want them to know how to play the game, enjoy the game, think it's fun. So that way they have a passion for later on. And I didn't see it as much in the parents that I had, because I was very straightforward about that stuff from the very beginning. But running the leagues and being involved in NYBA and being involved in these tournaments and now getting even more into the select stuff, I see so many parents that are so wrapped up in, I got to prepare my kid to play at this level and play at this level, as opposed to just letting them enjoy it for a period of time. And then when it becomes time to get serious, when the hormones kick in and the body is what the body is, and you see that your kid has aptitude, great.
Yeah, that's probably the hardest thing for all parents is, and it's just natural, is that they are never able to see their own child's performance with really clear vision. Mm-hmm. You're always going to feel like they're better than they really are.
Oh, sure.
I think that's just natural.
Daddy goggles. There's a reason that word exists.
Daddy goggles. But you're right. Things change. I've seen literally 6-year-old teams that are just taking it way too serious. And I've seen 14-year-old teams that aren't taking it serious enough to at least get to the goals they want.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I know you're getting into the whole club thing now too. Like I said, that serves a purpose. Like it's good for certain kids, but I don't believe it's the only path.
Oh no.
I think there's lots of paths. It boils down more to the player themselves' passion for it or desire to play, but it also boils down to the coaching that they're getting.
Yeah.
And repetition.
Yeah.
Repetition and coaching is very key, because you can be out there with a bad coach and play every single weekend and not get any better.
Right.
But you also can be with a really great coach, but if you're not getting play time and you're not practicing, you're not going to get any better. Right. So, there's different flavors for different people.
We experienced it a little bit with, so this was the first year that my son played school football. So I had coached him in flag and tackle all the way from the time he was in kindergarten till 6th grade. And I was more than happy, by the way, to let it go. Like I'm done. I retired. It was great. But what I experienced, so like when we played this year, his football team was, we were terrible. It was really bad.
That was my YMCA crush team.
Yes. It was rough in going to these games, but and this is football, very specific to football, because Troy he hasn't really hit puberty yet. He's still kind of a smaller kid. Some of the other kids are starting to, get past him in size and whatnot. It's frustrating for him. But in football, he knew what to do. Like he was aware, he knows how to, throw the ball. He knows how to run an offense, like, cause that's how we did it. So he understands the game very, very well. His size didn't necessarily put him in a place where he was like the best player because he was a smaller kid. But if he had size, he probably would have been. But my point is that all these kids came in to play junior high football, and 90% of the kids that played on his team had never put on a helmet in their life. This was the first time that they were playing tackle football. And I knew going into it, to some extent, once I figured out kind of the dynamic of it, I was like, all right, this is going to be a little tough. We're going to have to work through this. Maybe we'll have some big kids. They'll just figure it out or whatever. But that didn't happen. So we would go play these teams, like Burleson was a good example. We were playing in that division, and they would just annihilated us. Some of it was size, but they would all have 4 or 5 kids that you could tell had been playing tackle football since they were like in 3rd grade, and they were just lighting us up. And I would be in the stands, and the dads and the parents are like, the coaching and this and that, they'd have all these complaints about what was going on. And I'm like, guys, like, you have to understand, football is not something that you just decide to do as a 12-year-old and then all of a sudden you're good at it just because you're a good athlete, because it's a different game, because you have to have aggressiveness. You have to want to go out there and hit somebody and not be scared. And it's not that they can't get there, because they most certainly can and will. It's that it's not going to happen the first year that they do this, because this is a whole new thing. We're sitting here telling your kids every day, be nice, don't bully anybody, be polite, say yes, ma'am, thank you, and don't yell, don't get in fights, all this stuff. And then we push them out onto a football field and we're like, all right, kill.
Yeah.
And we wonder why does he not want to tackle anybody? Yes. So my point is just that, you have to go through experiences and you have to do stuff before you're going to become good at it. You can't just show up and automatically expect that your kids, and especially football was a great example of that. But this idea that some parents have about, well, I just got to do all these things and I'll set them up to play some kind of, get a scholarship, play in college, whatever. If that happens, great. But I've always told my kids and everybody else that I've coached or worked with over the years, your kid playing high school, playing college, playing anything else has zero to do with you. It's 100,000% on them. They have to have the talent. That's the number one thing. Okay. You can have all the desire in the world, but if you can't throw the ball or hit the ball, then you ain't going to play. All right. And then you have to have the desire, because there's a lot of kids that have really good talent and have ability, but they don't have the desire. Like the kid that burns out because he played 12 years and they never stopped. And then he gets to high school. He's like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's like a job. But you have to have those things. And we have nothing to do with that. So you have to just let it go. But it's really, really tough for parents to do that. And I understand, but I just don't know why that. I feel like that has changed from when I was playing at that age until now, or maybe there's just more of an abundance of it because the business side of
Are you
sports.
saying that you feel like there's a lot of parents today that feel like, hey, as long as I follow the recipe, the cake should be
Yes,
great?
correct. Yes.
Yeah, it does. It's not just, I mean, there's different recipes that get you that cake, but yeah, if you don't, the kid's the flour, I guess, in that situation. And if you don't have good flour, if you don't have the flour and if the kid doesn't have any talent, you can only do so much with that.
But that's okay. And
it's okay.
There's nothing wrong with it. And that's where I've said, like,
but don't have false expectations.
Right. And as a parent, I think we have to appreciate sports for what they are. And the reason I've always said I liked my kids, or one of my kids to play sports, I mean, I understood it. So that was part of it, because I participated myself and knew how to play the games. But it was more about the lessons that you get taught. You have to learn how to cooperate with other people. You have to work hard to achieve something and practice. And things don't always go your way. The umpire, you might have done everything right, and the umpire made a bad call, or the referee made a bad call, and you lost the game. Okay. There's nothing you can do about it. So you just have to keep going forward and move forward. And I think all of those lessons are so incredibly valuable that sports teaches you. And when you focus on that stuff, as opposed to the winning all the time and being the best player on the team. And, I think I've talked
to, like you have to experience the moments, and you have to experience it is a lot about the experience. It's funny. It's really not related to what you're saying, but one of my favorite stories of my time at MYBA, I was coaching, and it was back early on when Zach was small and we were playing in the draft league. And I got a kid out of the draft that had just been bounced around from team to team to team. He was the kid that nobody ever invited back. So he'd go back in the draft, and he was just bounced around. So I got him. He was not very good at all. He loved baseball, man. He loved to play.
Yeah.
And he loved being there. Like, he had the heart of a lion when it came to just everything you'd want in a baseball player. He just didn't have necessarily the talent, or at least I didn't think he did. But anyway, he was the weakest kid on the team. He did spend a lot of his time out in right field, and he couldn't touch a ball to save his life. But I was determined. I'm like, I want this kid. He's such a good kid and tries so hard. I want him to experience victory.
Right.
And I don't mean the team winning. I
For
wanted
himself.
him to win.
Yeah.
And so I would pull him off to the side and work personally with him at practices on hitting and all these different things. And I'll never forget, we were, back then it was like let's say a 10-game season. We were on like game 7. We were coming down to the end of the season. He had never, been on base except for a walk. It just, but he had the biggest smile on the team.
Yeah.
Happy to be there. I've been working with him. He gets up to bat. Everybody in the entire division knew who this kid was, because he played on all the other teams. Everybody knew who he was. Yeah. Everybody loved him because he had heart, but he just
wasn't good player.
Nobody wanted him on his team, but they loved him.
Yeah.
This kid gets up to bat, and he knocks the ball clear to right field fence. It just bombs it. Everybody on both teams
going crazy
stood up, was on their feet. He takes off running the bases. He rounds first, rounds second. As he's coming to third, and I'm coaching third, I'm watching the ball, and the ball's starting to come in. So I put my hands like this, and I'm like, whoa, stay right here. I don't want to name his name, but stay right here. And he, with the biggest grin he could, he rounded third and went home. Went home, got thrown out.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, but everybody was going nuts.
Yeah.
It was the greatest feeling in the moment. He lived with his grandparents. His grandparents immediately came over the dugout. Of course, I was close by because of third base coaching. And they were like, he came in, and they were congratulating whatever, and they came over the fence to me and said, "Oh my gosh, that was the greatest moment of his life. That's just so amazing. Thank you for all." And I said, I wish he would have stopped at third. He would have been. and they go, "Well, he can't hear, right?" I'm like, "What?" They go, "Yeah, he can't hear." I'd had like
no idea.
12 practices with this kid at least.
Oh,
we were in our 7th game, and I didn't know he couldn't hear. He could read lips.
Yes. Wow.
And he couldn't read my lips rounding third.
That's amazing.
And even though I was doing this, he didn't get it. But that's my greatest. It's one of my greatest moments. I've had some really great moments that just feel awesome. But I love that moment that he got that hit. But I'll never forget that. I'm like, you didn't think you should tell me that? And they said, well, he wears hearing aids to school.
Yeah.
And people pick on him, all this. And so baseball's his moment.
Yeah.
He refuses to wear them to baseball because he wants to be just like all the other baseball players. And it broke my heart. But at the same time, I'm like, well, now I can better coach him.
Yeah.
I can make sure that because who knows how many things I had said to the team and he couldn't even see my face.
Yeah. He had no idea. You know, it's that kind of stuff and those kind of moments that make you want to continue doing what you're doing. And I know now, so you're, you actually, I want to talk real quick before we wrap up here. I want to talk about your business a little bit. So, speaking of your passion for kids and, you know, everything that you like to do. So now you are, running a company that helps schools and organizations do fundraising. So tell us a little bit about that.
You know, we've said everything we've said about MYBA, and I don't make a dime on that. I lose money basically being the president, but I made my living in the restaurant business, and I did that forever. And the time came that I was no longer with the same company I'd been with forever, and I thought, you know, if I'm ever going to start my own business, now's the time.
Right.
While I'm not working for anybody, don't have a job basically.
Yeah.
And so I thought it'd really be great if I could find something that gave me the same kind of fulfillment that I get out of running baseball, but I can make a living at it,
right.
You know, because I am passionate about baseball. I feel like it's been my calling to try and make sure that the kids in this area get the best youth baseball experience that they can have.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm passionate about that. And I've always been passionate about kids. Anyway, long story short, I got involved with this existing company that does fundraising with schools, where I have these incredible, they're really special people that work for me. They're amazing people that are very charismatic, and everyone just loves to be around them, and the kids just love them. And they go into schools for 2 weeks at a time. And they go in there and do a character program where they're talking to kids about basically being good humans. And man, Mike and Kevin look different, but they're still the same. We're all the same. We may come from different backgrounds, but we all have the same opportunities. That, you know, they teach these kids to dream big. They can be anything in the world they want to be, and that when they dream big and accomplish those goals, they inspire others. It's all this great messaging, but all on the while, it's a fundraiser for the school. And they put on a big event at the end that's typically like a fun run or an obstacle course or something like that. And so instead of the students being out, you know, selling $12 candles or seeing how many candy bars they can peddle,
right.
They get friends and family to sponsor them in the event day.
Okay.
And so maybe for every lap they run, grandma gives them $1 or whatever. And so grandma feels a whole lot better about giving $1 per lap and that student going and doing their best than just, hey, you know,
buying a candy
what do
bar.
I hate the least out of this catalog or whatever.
Right.
And so it's just a really great thing. And, you know, it's been very rewarding because what my people do in the schools is phenomenal. Like the testimonials I get from teachers and principals and parents, and it's just incredible the difference that they're making. And, you know, we just finished the fall semester, and it's something I'll communicate with them before we start up spring, but they have had an impact on over 10,000 kids' lives just in the fall semester alone. And so it's really great. You know, I'm serving schools. We're doing schools all across DFW, and it's a really special program. Most of my schools will tell me, you know, the 2 weeks at Apex is here every year because once we get a school, about 95% of the time we keep them.
Yeah.
And year after year, they just talk about what a great program it is. That's the most exciting 2 weeks of the year. Attendance is up because the kids don't want to miss seeing the team members.
Right.
It's just a really great 2 weeks, and you know. I'm not going to get rich off of serving a school here, but if I can put enough of them together, I can make a living at it.
Yeah.
And I really feel like we're making a difference. And it's funny because the easiest schools for my people to serve are not necessarily the schools that need us the most. And what I mean by that is, you know, a lot of the fundraising companies like to chase the big wealthy schools. So that's where all the money is. But yet what we do, it's really, I mean, all students benefit. We serve schools all across the Metroplex from all different walks of life, and tons of money in some and no money in others. But a lot of the kids that really need the program are the hardest for my people to serve, because the kids are more unruly. They're not getting good guidance at home and things like
Right.
that. And they're the schools that nobody wants to send their kids to and things like that. That's where we really can make a huge impact, because those kids just don't want to, uh, disappoint my team members. They
Right.
think so highly of them, and it really is a great 2 weeks. It's a really good, feel good 2 weeks. I would say, majority of my, or a lot of my principals and a lot of the teachers friend me on Facebook after the school gets going.
Yeah.
And I've made a lot of good relationships that way. I've learned a lot about the school system that I didn't know before, which, is for another podcast at another time. But there's one thing I'll say is, although there are, just like anything, there's a handful of people that probably have no business being in education. There's a
Sure.
lot of people out there in education that really give their heart and soul to it, and they're underappreciated. They're destroyed by parents. You can have, it's just like baseball.
Yeah.
You can have a classroom of 20 kids, but it just takes one parent to make your life miserable. And the schools deal with that on the regular. And the more time goes, the less the schools can do about it. And,
Right.
Everybody, as soon as they pull a student out of a classroom for disrupting the rest of the class, it's lawsuits being threatened that student's not getting the education to the other students. And it's just, it's tough. It's really tough. And I really feel for a lot of my educator friends now, but most all of them, their hearts are in the right place, and they work hard, and they are not doing it for the paycheck, although they deserve more than they're getting. That, because if you think about it, our kids spent 12, if they went to college, even more years being developed by people we don't even know. And a lot of times they're just paid nothing.
I think it's the greatest travesty of anything.
They're paid nothing,
because
almost.
if you think about your kids' time spent, their life in their adolescent years, right? Younger and adolescent years, that they are the vast majority, 8 weeks. So they spend 40 to 50 hours a week with some other human being that's not you, being raised by them, right? So they're away from you more often than they're with you, because they're sleeping, they're doing whatever. So
they're with mom and dad for 4 or 5 hours a night while they're awake.
That's it.
Yeah.
They're with this other person all the time. And we talk about wanting to be when we are one of the best countries on the planet, et cetera. But we have to invest in people. Like, if you want to be the best, if you want to run a champion
can you imagine
company,
for a minute, let's say for a minute, that being a first grade teacher paid $200,000 a year. I'm not saying that's the answer, but if they made $200,000 a year,
yes,
you'd have a whole lot more people trying to get that job. That the schools could be way more selective about who gets those jobs. You would get the best of the best. But instead of the way we treat teachers now, we get the ones that are just willing to do it.
Right. Yeah.
And not necessarily the best.
Yes. Well, and sometimes they have to, or that's where they end up. Like, I joke, I don't want to give Chili's a hard time, but I joke about Chili's that
I use Chili's as an example.
That people end up at Chili's. Nobody goes to Chili's. Nobody's like, hey, let's go to Chili's tonight. Like, nobody says that, but people say, where do you want to go? I don't know. Where do you want to go? I don't know. Where do you want to go? And it's like,
it's the happy neutral. It's the neutral.
Let's go to Chili's.
You know what you're going to get.
Right. And I think that's what kids do, or young adults do in college and stuff. It's like, what do you want to be? I don't know. I'm going to be a teacher. It's fine. I can go do that or whatever. And not everybody. I'm just saying.
But see, I think times have changed, especially since COVID. During, because I was there with them too. We were serving schools virtually, some of them. But when COVID happened, the teachers' jobs changed dramatically, where now they had to deal with all these regulations of students that were in person.
Yeah.
They had to deal with students that weren't even on the campus.
Yeah.
And then they had this hybrid situation. It was really tough. But even then, I felt like the teachers weathered that storm really well. But now, like this year, for my business, the number one profession that was applying for the jobs that I was hiring for with my team members were teachers.
Yeah.
3 times more than ever before.
Yeah.
They're trying to get out because they're stressed.
Yep.
The job has changed.
Well, and they don't pay well enough.
It used to just be that, you don't make a lot of money at it, but I really want to do this.
The passion
now
for
it's, I'm not going to make a lot of money at it, and the job's going to be so difficult. I'm going to have parents are going to treat me like crud.
Yeah.
It's not at all schools. It's not all situations, but it is in a lot of them out there where my thing is just teachers are very undervalued and very underappreciated. And we would be way better off if we put more value on what teachers do and compensate them accordingly.
Yes, I 100% agree. And it's one of those things, like I joke all the time with my wife that, because I love, and I'm sure, you love to coach. I love to coach. I love being with the kids and working with them and doing all that kind of stuff. And I would say, like, I would love to quit my job today and go coach, whatever I could and teach. And that would be great, but I can't
walk away from what I'm doing.
No, I can't make enough money to make it worthwhile to me to do that. And I feel terrible for, those teachers out there that just love what they're doing and they put so much time and effort into it and so much passion. They're so underappreciated. I know, people say, oh, well, we send them the gifts for Christmas and we send them the mug for their birthday or whatever, they're the little things that people do and parents do. And if you're in a good community, that stuff happens. But the amount of time and effort and stress of dealing with, we get around our kids.
A handful of $10 gift cards to Chili's does not make up for the fact that they're making about half what they're worth.
Yes. And
it just doesn't make up.
And we, as parents, after 2 hours around my kids, I'm like, I'm done with you. Like, go away. I don't want to deal with you anymore. And we put these, kids with these teachers 8 hours out of the day and just take for granted the fact that they're dealing with all the stuff that we hate dealing with for 2 hours when they're home with us.
And then we hold them to really high expectations.
Yes.
We're only going to pay them this, but man, they better perform like they've got doctorate degrees.
Yeah.
And yeah, gosh,
no,
it's a tough time to be a teacher. Tough. It's a tough time to be a police officer.
Yes.
It's a tough time to be a lot of things, but it's a good time to be involved in youth baseball.
So how much longer do you think you're going to do this?
That's a great question. My answer has changed over the years because people ask me that. I remember after 5 years, like, how much longer are you going to do this? We've been doing it 5 years. Here in year 15. For a long time, my answer was, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I feel like it's my calling, and I feel like, I'm called. That's my give back to the community.
Yeah.
Is to try to make sure that the kids have a good experience at baseball, all the kids. But I do feel like now I'm starting to see the end.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know how far. I can't tell how far away it is. I feel like there's still a note at the bottom that says object may be closer than they appear.
Right.
It may be sooner than I think.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know if I said it on here or not, but there are a good group of commissioners we have now with some real talent that I think are going to be able to step up and take on some new leadership roles. And I just really want to make sure, like, yes, it does take up my time right now, but the juice is worth the squeeze. I enjoy the time. Anytime I'm ever, in fact, the way I think, like I said, it just takes one parent. I have that one parent that gets in my ear and just tries to do their best to try to make me miserable. All I got to do is go out to the park and watch a ball game.
Yeah.
Just walk through the park, and then immediately I'm reminded.
Realize all the people.
I want to keep doing it forever.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is the magic. This is why I do it.
Yeah.
And I just want to do it forever. But I would say as soon as at some point or another, it would have to happen, I guess. I told you before that, I could see myself really enjoy doing this in retirement.
Yeah.
But like, I'm still several years away from retiring. So am I just going to, my plan is to help groom some of these younger, newer commissioners and maybe some coaches that we have into taking on these leadership roles and see if I can't step back. It's not that I feel like if I step back, it's going to collapse. It's just that, a lot of people
like you still want to do it.
Even like yourself. I do.
Yeah.
I want to, but I know that I need to let somebody else, because honestly, when I came along, I know I brought a lot of new ideas, and me and a lot of other people, yourself included, were able to contribute and make MYBA better. The association would benefit from that. That's one of the reasons why I want to get some new board members on board, whether I'm here or not, just to bring in
new ideas,
new set of goggles, look at things differently. But I don't know. It'll be really hard for me to walk away from it. Like, there's a part of me that says, I did my tour of duty. I did 15 years. Like, how much blood you got to give?
Yeah.
But then there's another part of me that says, but why? What's so bad? Why wouldn't you just keep going?
Yeah.
If somebody ever came along that really wanted my position and I felt like was really qualified and would do a good job, I'd step aside in a minute.
Yeah.
Or if the general population, the coaches said, hey, look, it's time for a change. We need to, but that's not what happens. I have people tell me on the regular, I hope don't leave anytime soon.
Yeah.
I hope, this is so much better than our experience was down the road. I hope you're not going anywhere till my kid is is in high school.
Yeah.
And so I get those kind of notes all the time that keep me going. But I don't know.
Well, it's tough because people. It's funny you say that. People get spoiled with things, and what I mean by that is if you grew up playing NYBA or your kids did, they started like mine did, started at 3 and then played all the way till 6th grade or whatever, or even high school or junior high. You kind of take for granted how well it runs and how good everything goes, and there's always hiccups. Nothing's perfect. There's always good things that go sideways, but for the most part, but those people, maybe myself included, you lose sight of what you have until you go participate in another organization. And I got that perspective because of football and basketball and other things. But if you don't do those things and you just play baseball, it's like the parents that just play baseball, those are kind of the ones that have been there for a long time that you run into problems with. But the ones that come over from other organizations and other places and they play with you, they're like, this is great. Like,
well, see, that's part of what fuels me to keep going is because people do tell me that they come from other associations. Like, this experience is so different.
Yes.
And I don't want Mansfield to lose that. I don't want NYBA to lose that. And I know that it's not happening just because of Kevin, but I know that as long as I'm here, I'm going to make sure that's happening. And so I don't know if the next group of people will keep those things sacred that are so important to making sure the experience is because things like, that were happening when I first got here where, coaches were selecting some of their own players out of the draft. That's like, that stuff can't go on. I remember when I first got here and somebody said something about the good old boy club. Mm-hmm. And boy, I defended that to them. I'm like, it was literally my first thing. I'm like, there is no good old boy club here.
No.
I wouldn't be a part of a new book, but they were right. There was a good old boy club. When we say we have a random draft, yet some coaches are being allowed to say, hey, make sure I get these 2 or 3. That's the good old boy club. That's by definition what the good old boy club is. Some people are getting away with things that other people's aren't, taking care of your buddies or whatever. And I don't think anybody had ill intentions at all. It just seemed like that's just how it's done. They helped us rake a field one day. Let's let them pick a player, whatever. People justify stuff like that. I'm not saying there were bad people running the association or had ill will. I think sometimes you just don't you only know what you know. And sometimes you just don't realize that, hey, this what we're doing here really lacks integrity because it seems right to us, but because nobody's calling us out on it, we don't realize it's not. I noticed that Paula and Brett, whoever this is.
Brett works with me. Yes.
Brett, thanks for the comment. You're right. I don't know if he mentions maybe somehow incorporating VR into the experience of baseball could be part of a solution, but I mean, I don't know, something like that. Maybe virtual practices is a thing that could be.
Yeah, could be.
But I think we need to think outside the box because at the nuts and bolts of it, we are still getting out there and practicing and playing the game the same way we did back in the 70s. Yeah. It's the same game.
Same thing.
Might change the rules a little bit, but it's the same game. And he's right. If kids, when I was a kid, there was no such thing as aluminum bats. There was only wooden bats.
Yeah.
So at some point we had to start allowing aluminum bats, and he's right. We need, that's my whole point is what are we not evolving into that we should, while still, protecting the integrity of the game.
Yeah.
If this is just the way life is now and everything's digital and electronic.
Golf's done that.
Yeah, golf. You're a great example.
Yeah, well, they went from and I don't know how prevalent it is now, but like you see a lot of those whole golf courses turning into like the soccer thing with the big ring around it where they're kicking the ball, but then also the top golf and and playing 9 holes as opposed to 18.
And you can practice. You can practice your golf swing virtually.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so he's right. That's a great point. Honestly, it's something I really hadn't thought of, but it's that kind of thing though that I'm interested in having discussions about with some other people that are, embedded in youth baseball and honestly, it's all youth sports. I don't think it's just baseball needs to be thinking about this. I think softball does and basketball and everybody, we're all and it's not, we're not competing with it from a business standpoint. I mean, for the
best of the kids,
humans being humans and enjoying this great game that we love, whether it's basketball or baseball. How do we evolve with time so that people keep wanting to play? That's part of your childhood.
Yep.
And if something doesn't give, I don't think it's going to be. The only baseball a kid's ever going to play is against, Hank Aaron on the TV.
MLB the show.
MLB the show.
Yep.
So it's
one quick thing, and I want to wrap up, but I do want to ask you because we've talked about this before, and I personally want to know the state of it. But one of the things that we've always said about NYBA is that I think that we could do, or you guys could do even more if you wanted to some extent, if we had the fields. to do so. And there's a misconception to some extent of the people that play in the league about how much control MYBA has over the fields and what you can actually do.
Exactly.
And then, we go to places like playing in these club stuff now. We go to Texas Star, and we go to all these, and we're so centrally located to the south, the southeast part of Tarrant County and Midlothian and Burleson and Joshua and all these teams that go play in McKinney. If I have to go play in McKinney one more time for a baseball tournament, I'm going to lose my mind.
I'm glad you brought that up because, in my opinion, like I've already stated, we are one of the largest, if not the largest, youth baseball association in Texas, one of the largest in America. I wholeheartedly believe that Mansfield could be the youth baseball hub of North Texas, if
I
not
agree.
Texas, easily.
Yes.
I mean, we have, in my opinion, one hand tied behind our back, and we're still one of the largest. And it's not because we're the largest city.
Nope.
It's not because of all these other things. It's because we have a great offering here. We have people here that care about youth baseball and offering, and people have shown us they want to come play here. Not only do people come play here, but they end up moving here, which the city doesn't want to recognize. They spend their dollars here. Yet the fields over time, instead of improving, have
for one of the biggest organizations in Texas. And
the fields have deteriorated.
We play on some of the worst
fields.
I'm
trying to put this in the right way, but literally, I've said this in meetings with the city. The fields that we play on now look identical, except they look identical to the ones I played on when I was a kid in Burleson.
Yep.
At the old Bartlett Park.
Yep.
And when I got here 15 years ago, they looked better than they do now.
Yep.
When I got here 15 years ago, we had a nice flower bed right there at the entrance. Groomed, looked really nice. It wasn't anything fancy. It wasn't a brick. It wasn't a brick entry with ironwork or anything.
Yeah.
It was as it deteriorated and got worse and worse. I finally brought it up to city and say, hey, look, this used to look really good. Can we spruce this or whatever? Well, instead of doing that, they leveled it and putting rocks in.
Yeah.
It's a rock bed now.
But we have big league dreams.
Yeah, well, oh gosh, maybe we should talk about that, to be honest with you, because honestly, that's a little bit point of a contention right now. I will say that when we took that big spike and jumped to about 2,200 kids, I was really scared. We didn't have enough fields.
Yeah.
It was tough.
Yeah.
It was really tough to run the league with not enough fields. That's when we were forced to figure something out with Big League Dreams. When I got here, we did not use Big League Dreams for a variety of reasons. What I was told when I got here or had heard, everybody was telling me, I don't mean necessarily board members, but parents.
Yeah.
We don't want to play Big League Dreams because they charge us to get in.
Yep.
There's beer being served out there, which, to be honest with you, you go to Chuck E. Cheese, there was beer, but for some reason, or at the Ranger game,
there's still beer.
They didn't want it to be able to. Yeah. So, all these reasons why they don't want to. But the problem is, we've experienced a big spike in participation, and we needed to do something because we already had moved to starting the season earlier than anybody else starts their season. We were playing later than anybody else started their season. There was nowhere else to go. And so I finally arranged a meeting with Big League Dreams corporate. They came from California because they wouldn't work with them before that. They wouldn't. They're like, if you want to play here, you're going to pay this and pay that, pay to use the fields, going to have, and all this. So I got them together and I said, look, and up until this point, what I was told, and I'm pretty confident this is the truth, Big League Dreams had lost money. The company had lost money on this location every single year it had been open. They were in the red every single year. And so I sat down with them and I said, look, the most expensive seat you have in this place is the empty one.
Right.
Because they're not buying hot dogs. They're not buying pizza. They're not buying whatever. They're not paying to get in. The empty one is the most expensive one you have. So let's work on that.
Right.
I need field space, or we need field space. Sorry. And you need people in these seats. So I negotiated with them to get the gate fee down to a lower gate fee for our parents that was more reasonable. And I negotiated that anyone 13 and under didn't have to pay, and no players ever had to pay. And that the two coaches could get in free.
Yep.
And that worked for us. It wasn't ideal. And if we, BLD's in pod, they have 2 pods. There's 4 fields over here, 4 fields over there. They call them a pod. And each one has a concession stand. The agreement was that if we were playing on this pod, the beer taps were turned off over here.
Right.
And if we're playing on both of them, they're turned off in both places. And they did that for a long time. And honestly, I don't have a whole lot of complaints about BLD, except that they recently sold. I do wish that the city had made youth baseball, not necessarily NYBA is youth baseball here, but they should have made the youth baseball experience a bigger part of the plans for BLD.
A bigger
because
priority.
Everybody paid for that, approved that, thinking that's where our kids are going to go play baseball. But honestly, it was built BLD, the company, their target participants, a beer drinking softball player.
Yeah.
That's where they make their money.
Yep.
Those guys come out there and buy pitchers of beer at a time. They pay good money to play there. That's who they wanted in there. They didn't even want us there.
Yeah.
So we started playing on, the weeknights, and we made those negotiations, and it worked out well. And I'll never forget, I'm not taking full credit for it, or NYBH taking full credit, but it is what it is. I'll never forget at the end of our first season of using that park, in the newspaper everywhere in Mansfield, it said, BLD finally turns a profit.
Right.
So I'm sure it was a combination of things, but that was part of it. Well, now there's new owners in there, and without calling a meeting with us at all, without discussing it. And by the way, Forrest, if you're watching this, the manager of BLD, high respect for Forrest. He works with us and does a great job. This has nothing to do with the manager or the staff at BLD. This is BLD corporate. The new owners decided to pretty much double the gate fees on us overnight, and all these other rule changes. And basically, for me to put a family of fours, just half their games out there, 6 games out of a season, or 5 games, it was going to cost that family over $100 in gate fees just to go watch their kid play.
Yeah.
They were going to pay more in the gate fee. Forget buying a hot dog or a $7 Coke or whatever. They were going to pay more to go watch the game than they were paying us for registration fee to get a uniform and all these other things, umpire fees. And it's just not, it just doesn't make sense. And I realize they're a business and they got to do what's best for their business. And I don't know what their financials look like after they did that and we stopped playing there. I mean, I had parents, they didn't even tell me they raised the gate fee. The reason I found out is the night they did it, I started getting all these texts from BLD, from parents that are going, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
We do not want to play here anymore if this is the way it's going to be.
Yep.
And so I talked to Forrest, and as much as I didn't want to do it, because, I know that Forrest, the manager over there, is, he has performance that he's gauged on, and a lot of it's numbers and things like that. But I just couldn't we couldn't in good conscience tell this family, you're gonna go play over there and it's gonna cost you a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so we tried it the first season, not doing it. It's not easy. It's not what we prefer to do, but all of our games are back at the sports complex. But to your point that you made, so BLD, if you're watching this, we should talk. We don't have to have your fields, but I wish the city, like I said, I wish the city made it more of a priority that youth baseball was part of the experience. Part of the youth baseball experience is playing over there, and it's really not. In the lease agreements with them, at least, I don't know what it is with the new owners, but at least in the prior owners, they were supposed to give us certain amount of usage of the fields if we asked. And, like girls softball played there one season and they never went back.
Right.
For a reason. And we kept doing it because we needed the fields. And in that time, 15 years ago, immediately we started having meetings with the city saying, we need to do this to our fields. I never once went to them and said, let's scrape and build.
Right.
We need a whole new park. I never did that, but I'm like, we need to start working on improvements. And right away it was like, oh, there's a master plan and there's all these things. And over time, because there's always a master plan going on, we don't want to spend a dime today if we're spending, $2 and they'd always say it's a few years away.
Yeah.
Why spend those dimes now? So nothing ever got done. And so over time, the trees and the shrubs went away, and the posts out front of the park are all rusted and unpainted, and all these things. The only thing really positive that's happened in that park, as far as improvement, is they built us a storage building that's too small, but they built us a new storage building by field 1, and that's it.
Yeah.
Same restrooms that were being used when there was only 4 fields there, and there's 9 now.
Yep.
Same little tiny concession area that is smaller than this little space we're in right now.
Yep.
It's just ridiculous, and we can't get anywhere with it. And yes, they did. You could say, well, they put it up for bond, and the voters spoke. Well, we're in a recession. There's a lot of other things going on. Tax, appraisals had just come out. There's a lot of reasons why it may not have passed. But at the same time, it doesn't take a bond package. Just budget some money. In the last 15 years, we could have transformed this park into something amazing if they just spent a little money each year. Yep. Instead, now it's so far behind. You talk about Burleson or Grapevine and some of those other cities that built nice parks. Those parks not only are so much nicer than ours, but they've been around for a while now.
Even they're starting to get a little outdated.
We still have the same fields.
Yes.
That don't look as good as they did 15 years ago. So that I just don't really understand. There's times where I feel like, you know what? MYBA is not just one of the largest baseball associations in Texas, one of the largest associations in Mansfield. Like, what other group has that many members in it? Or, there might be some, there's not many. There's times where I think, we just got to make our voices heard, and we got to go. And then, in fact, we got called. We were actually going to go to City Hall one time, and we got asked to stand down. Basically.
Well, I wanted you. The reason I wanted to ask you about it, and I'm sorry we had to wait to the last year to do it, but
you're fine.
But the reason I wanted to ask you is because I think you personally and MYBA gets a lot of grief about the fields. Like, it has something to do with what you're not willing to do or unable to do, or the cities, or they don't understand how much. Because I witnessed it myself, because I've been to the Parks and Rec meetings, and you guys fight for this every single year. Like,
it's an ongoing battle.
Every single year.
We just can't win. I will say there's a lot of good people in the Parks Department that work very hard for us. And I'm going to give a special shout out to Heath. Heath's the most incredible employee that they have, to be honest with you. But, they all have jobs to do too. But, like I said, there's some good people there, but then there's some people that honestly I feel like could care less.
Yeah.
They'll just give you lip service or whatever it takes to get you to go away. And it's a shame. I mean, we say that we talk about ourselves, the city of Mansfield, in such a positive way. And there's so many positive things that happen with this city, yet there's things like this that we just neglect. And, there's very few young, by the way, girls are invited to play with us if they want. They usually choose to play girls softball. So if girls want to play, they can play there. When I say the word boy, it's just mostly it is boys. But you'll be hard pressed to find a single boy that lives in Mansfield that doesn't at some point play MYBA. Mm-hmm. Everybody at least tries it. Very few don't at least try it.
Yeah.
Lots of them play it. You'll be hard pressed to ever find kids on any of the high school teams that didn't at some point play MYBA.
Yeah.
Very rarely does it happen. Yet we've just ignored that park, and we do every season, every year, we do minimum maintenance, whatever it takes to just put lipstick on. We don't even put lipstick on the pig. I'm not even going to say that, because they don't even do that. We groom the fields just enough. We repair the mounds just enough to get through another season. Yeah. That's all that gets done.
Yeah.
When the restrooms get terrible enough, they'll repaint them.
Yeah.
But they're the same stalls that were in there 15 years ago. It's the same flooring, same mirrors, all that. And I just don't get it. We build these nice parks. We build nice infrastructure and buildings, and we want to attract all these nice businesses and all these things. Yet so many kids go through that park, and so many, on any given Saturday, we'll have, 20, I do the math on it occasionally, 2,500 spectators that I go through that park on a Saturday, who leave and go spend their money in this town, but we won't spend any money on that park. We need fenced in warm-up areas.
Yeah.
The kids have to warm up, throw the ball where people are walking.
Yes.
And it's just ridiculous. And, the city, so if somebody for the city we're sitting here right now, they would say, oh, we have plans right now to try to address that. But there's been plans to address that for 15 years.
Right. Yes.
And there was a master plan for years, and I was told, oh, it's coming. And then I remember we got just to the point where it was some stuff should have started happening. It's like, well, we've decided the master plan's so old, we need a new one.
Right.
And everything went out the door. In fact, at one point, we need more restrooms at that park so bad, we were willing to foot the bill on a good chunk of putting some new restrooms out there.
Yes, I remember that.
Remember?
Yes.
I fought hard for that. We fought hard for that. And
we were going to put up half of the money.
Most of the money.
Yes.
Most of the money.
Yes.
And they sent it out for bid, came back. Somebody on the council at the time, it wasn't current council, but council at the time, somebody didn't like it, send it out for rebid again, get some more bids. The process took so long that by the time they got the bids the extra bids they wanted to get, the price had doubled because lumber was going up. Right. And then they scrapped it. We can't pay this much money for something like that. So guess what? We still have the bathrooms we had 15 years ago.
Yeah.
We have nothing more.
Yes.
And so on Saturday, you'll see either lines of kids or people lined up out the bathroom door to use the bathroom, or they're standing out back peeing on the trees.
And there are no attendants or people from the city that are there to clean the bathrooms and take care of it. That's all the volunteers that are there.
Well, I don't want to knock them too much on that, because I think I'm not going to complain about that. That you're okay. In their eyes, we do lease the park from them. Okay. They leave it to us in good shape. So I don't want to knock them too much on that. Because the people that are in charge of that, I think, we can pick up the phone, we can say, hey, we need this. And they do a pretty good job with that. But as a city, we just treat most of our youth sports really bad. We
Yeah.
just, we just ignore them, and it's such a
Which
big
is odd for a
part.
place with 6 high schools that,
Yeah, and sports is so important, high school sports, and I just don't, I really don't understand it. And it's funny because I'll never forget one council member, the very first season we started using Big League Dreams. His first night out at Big League Dreams, he was a newer council member at the time. I won't name him by name, but he went out there and he could not believe we had just spent all this money to build this park, and now he had to pay to get in there. And he sent out an email to me and every council member, the mayor, everybody, and said, "This is ridiculous. It's not an appropriate amount. We shouldn't even have to pay to get in there." Blah, blah, fired it off. And I remember thinking, "Wow, at least somebody at least is advocating for us." And he got shut down quick.
Yeah. Well,
I wasn't privy to the conversations that were had with him, but that whole issue went away. It was never spoken about again.
The only time things change is when people demand it, and that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, that's what I say. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, and there's times where I feel like it shouldn't come to that, and that's why we haven't done anything like that. But we did have a night where we were going to go make a statement at a council meeting, and we had a ton of people that were coming to try to get more fields, and I was politely asked not to do it before it happened, and told that we will have some meetings and we will get it addressed. And they assured me that the solution was coming, and it was all part of that first master plan.
And how'd that work out?
Did not happen. And so then it's like, but then you also get bigger fish to fry. It's like, do I really want to spend the time it would take to advocate,
championing,
and really
cause
champion
for that?
Getting, because I do that. That's like, honestly, that's been one of my goals on my plate. Is like, I really want to stay long enough to see these kids get a better park to play in.
Yeah. Whether
that's a new one, because that seems to be the city's best interest so far, has always been to build a new one, get rid of the old one, build a new one. Which if they can do that, that's fine. But it's like, it doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Right.
And that's what it's been, all or nothing. And since it couldn't be all, it was nothing.
Yeah. And
I've really wanted to see the day that these kids got a park that we could all be proud of, that when you walk in, and we're working on another plan now since the bond package didn't pass. And, I want to believe in it, but I've heard this so many times before. It's hard to believe it, but they're working on a plan to maybe put some brick and mortar and wrought iron at the front, and putting in some warm up areas, things like that. But I mean, until we actually put something at that park and actually do something, it's getting really hard to bite him. It's almost like, they just keep crying wolf. It's like you keep promising things to us, and I'll even communicate that to our members. This is where we're headed and what it's going to look like in the next 2 or 3 years. And 15 years later, it's worse.
Yeah. Well, I want to say, I appreciate, we're at almost 2 hours here, so we went a long time, but I really appreciate you coming in and talking to me. And I do think that, the time and effort that you've committed to the city and doing what you're doing, I don't think, I hear more grief that you get than positive. I know you hear a lot of positive stuff, and I think that's awesome, because the vast majority of people are thrilled and love how everything works. But
like I said, it's, with roughly 3,000 parents in a season, it's usually just 5 or 6 that express discontent. But man, they really try hard to make your life miserable, and you just have to try to move past those, because making 2,995 people happy is pretty darn good. And I learned that a long time. You'll never make everybody happy, no matter what. We could stand out at the ballpark and tell everybody to come out tonight because we're handing out free money, and somebody would complain that it wasn't enough, or that we didn't give them enough notice. You just can't make everybody happy. But I think we do a pretty good job of doing the right thing as often as we can. That's in the best interest for all the kids. And when people do send something nice, I don't need anybody to tell me thank you. I don't need, but when you get some positive feedback about how I just got here, this is so much better than any experience I've had before. Or you hear, wow, this was my son had the best season ever. And, people have to realize coaches volunteer too. I don't go out and interview coaches, and we don't just say, let's handpick the coach. It's whoever volunteers.
A lot of times you're calling, like you got called the very first time to say, hey, we don't have a coach. Can you help us out?
Yeah, that happens. Yes. We have to recruit coaches. And sometimes we have to tell coaches, look, this isn't for you, and you don't need a coach anymore. That's happened a few times. But I'm really proud overall of what, you were a big part of where we are today. And there's a lot of people in the past, the Lesters, the Tonys, the Joshes, and even the guys that were here when I got here. They had an impact on making MYBA what it is today. And I think we've done a pretty good job of evolving over the years and continuing to be open to change. But I do think we need to think about next level and what baseball looks like for the next 10 years and how we slow down this gravitation over to electronics, or maybe incorporating electronics like Brett has said. But yeah, I appreciate being here. I could talk. I've said before, when this is all over, when I do leave MYBA or step down, I need to write a book.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things that I'm not saying.
Yeah.
Not necessarily to bad about people, just about
experiences of
what comes with running an association like this.
Yeah.
And just the nature of some people. And like I said, the schools, I could do the same thing with schools when I wouldn't do it now because I wouldn't want anybody's feelings to get hurt. But like I said, our school system needs some attention. The teachers don't get the love, and the administration don't get the love if they need to. But yeah, I could talk all day about some of these things, but I appreciate you having me.
Yeah,
it's been a lot of fun.
We'll do it again sometime. There's like I said, we could talk for hours and hours about this, and down the road we'll hook up again. My hope is that maybe we can get some headway on some fields and really make an improvement for the city and get people fired up about that a little bit. It's just because I do think, my kids are older, they're not going to be participating in that, and I ain't having any more kids. So
yeah, my son doesn't participate anymore, but I'm just really passionate about just the experience the kids get here.
Yes.
Because it can be a good experience and it can be a bad experience, and it's not always going to be great. You can't just sign up for MYBA or anywhere and it's going to be a perfect season, because there are volunteer coaches and there are volunteer people. We can't control all of that. Sometimes we can react, but we can't necessarily control things from not happening. I think overall, I know we're trying to wrap this up, but I think overall our parents, because I think we lay a good groundwork, but overall our parents are well behaved.
Yeah.
You see see these videos online and people fighting on the fields and things like, and I'm not saying that things don't ever get out, people don't ever get out of line, but for the most part, it's very minimal and it's very controlled. And I think part of it is us laying the groundwork and being serious about, hey, if you are coming in here acting that way, we're going to eliminate you. You won't be here at our park. But we also just have really good people here that really care about a great baseball experience. And you were one of them.
Well, I think you've done a great job, and I hope you continue to do the job, because I think it means a lot to the city. And I do think there's a lot of room for improvement. And I think that you could, continue to be the advocate for that, make a difference with it. And I look forward to it. So we'll definitely do this again sometime. But again,
I don't know if you know or not, I have a YouTube channel, and we've thought about starting some podcasts. So I'll have you as a guest on. I want to mind them.
No, I love it. I love talking about this stuff. It's one of my favorite topics. So if anybody watched this all the way to the end, I appreciate it. If you see it down the road, thanks for hanging out and tuning in for a little while. And we'll get back to real estate and finance another day. But this is something I really enjoy, and I really appreciate you being here, Kevin.
Absolutely. So, thanks for doing this.
All right. We'll see you guys later.